Our tale begins. The scene opens on a bustling school classroom. Students murmur nervously about the upcoming awakening test, for none of them knew what great power slept within their souls. Suddenly, a voice cuts through, nudging the main protagonist. Chun Qianmo, it's time for you to wake up. As Cheng's eyes flutter open to the familiar classroom, a chilling shock grips him as he nervously wonders where he is. This world is known as the Blue Star. On its surface, it bears a striking resemblance to Earth. However, a cataclysm a century prior had irrevocably altered its fate. Countless millions of monsters had invaded. This onslaught resulted in immeasurable human casualties. Fortunately, the humans here possess innate, extraordinary talents. Should one pass the fated awakening trial and transition to a new profession, they can defy the monstrous tidal wave. The entire world now revolves around cultivating these awakened ones, who ascend to become the absolute elites of this new era. Pondering this new reality, Chung wonders if this setup mirrors the world from a certain game, the legendary Vermorph Genesis that he once dominated. It feels as though he has transmigrated into a universe, where the game he mastered has now merged with his own reality. Chung recalls that in his past life, he had utterly vanquished all other players. He stood only a single step from becoming the undisputed greatest player in history. But crippling skill cooldowns and damage limitations held him back. He was unable to overwhelm the final boss, who endlessly summoned a tide of minions. At that moment, Chung had tasted true despair. Recalling it now, a burning frustration ignites within him, for he was so close, a single step away from the summit from achieving godhood. Abruptly, the boy shakes Chung again. Do you seriously have time to be lost in thought? When Chung finally focuses on the boy, he recognizes him. It's his old friend, Lai Hong. A wave of relief hits him. I never imagined that you would have crossed over here as well. Lai Hong just stares back, bewildered. He asks, what is this crossover you speak of? Chung seemed to be in a mood for jesting and games. At such a critical moment, Lai Hong, growing tense, adds that even the top prodigies are on edge. Lai Hong pleads, if even the best students are this anxious, then what am I supposed to do? Observing Lai Hong, Chung notes that his friend's appearance and his very personality are nearly a perfect match to how he was in the previous life. It would seem the intricate web of relationships and the living environment in these two worlds are not so different. Lai Hong, practically weeping, cries out, I am just so terrified. The Awakening Talent Assessment is a singular, life-defining event, and if he doesn't succeed in tomorrow's school-wide trial, he's certain his father will have his head. Back in the world of Genesis, a player could only initiate talent awakening by successfully contacting the legendary Awakening Stone. In the novice region, Lai Hong, his voice trembling with stress, begs Chung, asking if he's facing a do-or-die crisis tomorrow, and whether Chung could possibly extend a helping hand. Chung replies coolly, telling Lai Hong to specify what help he requires. Lai Hong grins, saying his aspirations are not particularly high. He only needs to successfully awaken his talent somehow, and that alone would be enough to satisfy his fearsome father. In truth, Li Hong was pleading with Chung for assistance, because Chung always ranked in the top 3 and was known for his wit. So he is praying that Chung can devise a last-minute miracle. At that very instant, Chung thinks that games are one thing and reality is another. Even though his legendary gaming experience remains, he is uncertain how deeply this new world is connected to Genesis. So Chung concludes he must first investigate it for himself. Li Hong presses again, asking if Chung has devised a solution. Chung reassures him, telling Lai Hong to remain calm, as he intends to venture into the secret realm first and formulate a strategy. Lai Hong joyfully shouts out, praying that Lady Luck will stand by Cheng's side, and he vows to provide him with meals for a year if he succeeds. The scene transitions to a short time later. We are at the training auditorium. Within the training auditorium, Chung overhears other students strategizing. They should eliminate the weaker monsters first. A girl then retorts, declaring no, that's not a sound strategy, since the low-level minions would consume too much stamina if engaged. Chung also spots a student trembling in fear, pleading with the others for aid as the elite monsters are too powerful. After arriving at what he assumed was the entrance, he now stands before the Great Gate. Chung, filled with excitement, wonders what this new world will be like, now that the game and stark reality have become one. As he steps through, he feels a blinding light wash over him. When Chung finally opens his eyes, he beholds a village and is stunned to realize that the village is a flawless recreation of the Genesis games. Legendary Newbie Village. Suddenly, a strange screen materializes before Chung, and new information declares that the binding transformation system is being initiated. Chung, utterly bewildered, wonders what this transformation system could be. He reads the data which explains that this transformation system can fuse two active skills that meet certain conditions into an entirely new passive skill. The sheer power of the passive skill is directly influenced by the character's attributes. Reading this, Chung feels a surge of joy, and he thinks that if this is truly identical to the Genesis game, then this system is unbelievably overpowered. Chung recalls that in Genesis, 99% of skills were active, bound by cooldown limitations. Thus, it's impossible to trigger active skills without end. This makes it easy to expose one's vulnerabilities and be decimated by a counterattack in battle. But passive skills are perpetually active, unbound by cooldown restrictions, only activating under very specific circumstances. As one's level increases, the activation probability of these passive skills also rises infinitely. This is precisely why they are so legendary. In his past life, Chung failed to become a god due to the crippling skill cooldown limitations. This time, with the transformation system, Chung hopes it can allow him to finally amend his past regrets. Just then, the screen prompts Chung to choose the skill he wishes to transform. Chung selects the option for the skill Wave Slash. The moment Chung chooses it, a glimmering sword materializes in his hand. The screen then displays the information. Wave Slash, Level 1. It strikes enemies ahead with a devastating upward slash, unleashing a shockwave that deals multiple hits to foes within a 3-meter radius. The screen then shows that the passive transformation was a success. Now, with the passive wave slash, there is a 30% chance to unleash the skill upon attacking. Upon activation, Wave Slash becomes a pure sword energy assault, with its damage receiving a 1.5 times bonus from the user's strength attribute. Furthermore, the user becomes invincible for 0.2 seconds. Chung feels an incredible thrill, realizing that it actually enhanced the method of attack. An added bonus damage, a very welcome addition. Suddenly, a beast appears, and when Chung sees it, he identifies it as a formidable level 3 Minotaur, one of the more difficult monsters in the training area. Without warning, the Minotaur charges straight at Chung. Chung thinks to himself that this is a perfect chance for some live combat training. Chung unleashes a counterstrike against the Minotaur with his blade. The Minotaur is blasted into the air, followed by an explosion. But to Cheng's astonishment, the Minotaur emerges completely unscathed. Taking 0 damage, the beast continues its relentless assault on Chung, while he expertly evades its attacks. At this moment, Chung considers that he is only level 1 for now, so it is exceedingly difficult for him to defeat this Minotaur. There came a moment when Chung was on the brink of defeat, as his sword shattered, but just then an alert flashed on the screen. It announced that Wave Slash had been successfully triggered, and the user was now invulnerable for 0.2 seconds. Reading the notification, Chung wonders if blocking that attack activated the passive effect. With the bonus damage also now engaged, Chung sidesteps the Minotaur's savage attack and strikes at it with his half-shattered sword. This time, the mighty Minotaur is vanquished. Chung is overjoyed, realizing that, after converting the skill into a passive one, it not only fixed the dreaded cooldown problem, but also created an entirely new damage-dealing system. This absolutely solved the very issue that blocked him from reaching the summit in his previous life. Now, in his current existence, Chung is confident he can finally amend the regrets of his past and truly ascend to the level of a god. As Chung was lost deep in thought, suddenly another monster launched an attack. Chung parries the blow and counters it effortlessly. Within moments, he easily vanquishes the beast. Chung reflects to himself that, in this novice realm, he has trained for multiple hours, finally regaining a deep sense of familiarity with the peerless combat experience from his past life. As long as he discovers which realm the assessment will be held in, assisting Li Hong to awaken his talent will not be a difficult feat. The information screen then directs Chung to select his second, transformed passive skill. Chung then considers that, in the beginning stages, novices are typically slain by monsters because their damage output is far too low, and their skill cooldowns are much too long. Since the first skill chosen was for offensive power, the second skill should be selected to mitigate cooldowns. Chung then chooses the weapon switching skill. Upon activation, for the following 30 seconds, the cooldown duration for switching weapons is lowered by 30%. Then, the passive transformation is also a success, and the cooldown time for switching any and all weapons is now permanently lowered by 30%. Chung then inspects his inventory and discovers several basic novice armaments within his backpack. With the new passive of weapon switching, he can now rapidly cycle between various weapons during a fight. Chung then gazes at his own status window, and after reviewing it, he becomes incredibly excited. The fundamental problem of the weapon switch cooldown is solved, making these early-stage encounters feel like he has a built-in cheat. Chung then departs from the village area, thinking to himself that he will now await tomorrow's assessment. The scene shifts to the day of the assessment, where Chung asks a boy if he has a sufficient supply of healing potions. The boy confirms with a confident yes, stating his virtual backpack is packed with 9 full slots. Suddenly, Li Hong rushes in and declares that he is ready to follow orders. He reveals that he had his father use the power of money to acquire the map. For this day's assessment, Chung advises Li Hong to lower his voice so others don't discover his father used the back door. Li Hong recognizes his blunder and, feeling a surge of panic, apologizes for being overly excited, promising to remain discreet. Chung then sees that the map is titled Flame Fisher. He mentions that it's rumored to be a realm chosen by Professor Lu, and his standards are notoriously strict. The difficulty level is anticipated to be high. Chung then recalls that, if his memory serves him correctly, most of the monsters in there are between levels 3 to 10. This shouldn't prove to be too difficult. Chung then asks Li Hong what the highest level elite monster he can defeat solo in the novice realm is. Li Hong admits that even if he gives it his all, perhaps he could maybe handle a level 5 monster. Chung feels a wave of tension, thinking he hadn't anticipated Li Hong's power to be this inadequate. Chung then states that it appears they will have to rely on a special backdoor for Li Hong. Suddenly, another boy's mocking voice interrupts. He asks Li Hong, "Do you want to use your family's wealth to take a shortcut?" The boy's name is revealed to be Mao Feng, the wealthy second-generation heir from the neighboring class. Li Hong, enraged, is about to start a brawl with Mao. Chung tells him to calm his temper, but Li Hong explodes, telling Chung to leave him alone, as he is determined to settle the score with Mao, even if it should cost him his very life. At that moment, Mao sneers that he thinks Chung is more rational. He points out that Chung knows Li Hong is nothing but a failure, which prevents Li Hong from making any foolish moves. But suddenly, Chung trips Mao by subtly extending his leg. As Mao walks past, Chung smirks and tells Mao that there's no need to offer such a formal apology. So formally, Mao, utterly enraged, demands to know if Chung is tired of living. Mao furiously swings a punch directly at Chung, but Chung effortlessly deflects it by catching his fist. Mao, tense, wonders how Chung possesses such strength. Chung then asks Mao if he would dare to accept a wager with him. Chung issues a challenge to Mao, a bet. He declares that Li Hong's assessment score will undoubtedly surpass Mao's. Hearing this, Mao and his crony are initially speechless, but soon they erupt into mocking laughter over it. Mao asks if he truly heard Chung correctly. A wager with a guaranteed victory. He states he has absolutely no reason to decline, but he will be the one to set the stakes. Mao then declares that the loser must run 10 laps around the playground, completely naked, while screaming the other person's father's name 3 times. Mao taunts Chung, asking if he dares to accept the wager now. Chung calmly responds with an okay, stating, "It is a bet." Hearing this, everyone else is flabbergasted and whispers that Li Hong, who has always been at the bottom, wants to challenge the top-ranking student, Mao Feng, in the assessment. The gap between the two is by no means a small one, and everyone believes it's like handing over victory for free. Li Hong also tenses up and asks if Chung has gone insane, wondering how he could ever possibly defeat Mao. Chung simply asked Li Hong to place his faith in him. Li Hong, tense, asks, "Believe in what, exactly?" He adds that he merely wants to pass the assessment, boast to his father, and get some allowance money. So why is Chung turning this into such a massive ordeal? Li Hong, looking incredibly panicked, collapses onto the ground in despair. Chung then told him to get up and simply listen to his plan. Chung leans close and whispers something into Li Hong's ear. Hearing this, Li Hong was astonished and asked if Chang was certain about this. Chang replied with a confident yes. Suddenly, Li Hong began to celebrate wildly, leaping around and shouting that he would make Mao Feng run, while screaming "Dad!" At that moment, Zhang Lei, the grade director of Jiangxing College, declared that the assessment had officially commenced. Then an announcement was made instructing every student to enter one by one. Li Hong excitedly told Chang to watch and witness his performance. Following that, Chang also strode into the assessment area. The Flame Fisher. Chang shared that he remembered this dungeon as a colossal volcano, brimming with rivers of scorching lava everywhere. The primary monsters were vile orcs and demons. After scaling the treacherous mountains, the summit housed the dungeon's final boss, the fearsome Zaylan. In this place, Chang felt a peculiar sense of familiarity. Ethan then said, it had been a very long time since he last ventured into a beginner's dungeon. At that instant, 2 level 2 flame blade devotees, hideous green-skinned low-level monsters, appeared and swarmed Chang. Chang vaulted into the air to evade them, but somehow managed to halt his momentum. But now, Chang was completely encircled by numerous monsters. At that moment, he considered how in the past, computer games were controlled via a keyboard and mouse, but now, everything depended on his own instinctive physical movements. Chang drew a basic novice sword, and thought that these monsters were undoubtedly different from the nerfed versions. In the training ground, facing 5 at once felt somewhat challenging. Suddenly, the information screen revealed it had registered the host's immense reservoir of operational experience, which had now been fully converted into instinctive bodily movements. Seeing this, Chang wondered in astonishment. Could operational experience truly be converted into a passive skill? When the transformation process was finished, Chang realized his body felt profoundly different. As the monster lunged toward Chang, he instinctively leaped out of its path, evading the attack. Chang then countered with a devastating strike of his own. At that moment, Chang was amazed by this transformation ability, as he could now command every muscle in his body. His newfound instinctive movements felt just like playing the game in his previous life. With a surge of confidence, Chang challenged the monsters to come all at once. Hearing this, the monsters became enraged and charged toward Chang. Chang swiftly thought that he must lure them into a single straight line, and eliminate them all in one fell swoop. When the monsters were perfectly aligned, Chang saw his opening and struck them with a slide tackle. He then recalled that all novices begin with the active skill, slide tackle. Chang then activated the skill wave, slash, with his newly acquired passive transformation. He was astounded, as he couldn't believe the passive had activated so quickly. Chang then had a realization and shared that he never expected. A passive skill could nullify the attack's recovery animation. With that, Chang effortlessly annihilated all the monsters in a single blow. The information screen then announced that due to his special actions, his experience gain had been boosted by 50%, gaining 50 experience points, multiplied by 5. Chang leveled up to level 3 and received 8 free attribute points. Seeing this, Chang wondered if he could truly gain bonus experience by performing special kills on monsters, and that just 5 monsters could level him up twice consecutively. Chang then ran onward with haste, thinking that with so many fundamental skills and weapons available, this was far more engaging than the virtual game of Genesis from his former life. The scene then cuts back to the school area, where the students were astonished and pointing at the scoreboard, urging each other to look as a name rocketed up the leaderboard. They all saw that it was the very person who confronted Mao Feng. They were stunned to see that Chang had gained 2 levels in under 5 minutes within the secret realm, and was now occupying the number 1 rank. They all grew excited, realizing their school had a hidden prodigy they had never known of before this day. John Lee also wondered, could it truly be him? He found this very interesting, and wondered if Chang held any other surprises in store. Chang advanced forward cautiously, sensing the presence of more monsters along the path. When he looked up, he saw the monsters were shadow mages, escorted by demonic dogs. Chang recalled that Genesis had a particular bug related to them. He thought that if he could properly exploit this bug, he wouldn't have to slowly grind them one by one to level up. Instead, he could execute a massive power leveling strike. But that was far easier said than done. Chang knew that if he could achieve this feat, leveling up would become a simple breeze. He then equipped a weapon called the grappling hook gun, and with its aid, he ascended to a high mountain perch. There, Chang produced a small, flying dart and hurled it towards the distant shadow mages. Upon registering the attack from the dart, the shadow mages instantly entered their combat state. The shadow mages retaliated with a volley of shadow arrows. At that moment, Chung recalled that as low-level monsters, the shadow mages possessed only two types of magic, shadow arrows and summon hounds. Failing to find a target to attack, the shadow mages let their arrows dissipate and reverted to their default idle state. Chung thought that this was not bad, as breaking their line of sight had worked flawlessly. From this vantage point, the shadow mages would be unable to hit him. It turned out that this type of completion bar magic, like shadow arrow, could not strike targets outside of their visual range. With the success of this first crucial step, Chung prepared to execute the second step. He realized that while the shadow mages were casting their magic, he could use that time window to kill the monster dogs. Chung recalled that the next phase of this bug was the most fascinating. He explained that the priority of the hound summoning skill was higher than that of the shadow arrow, so the shadow mages could only summon their demonic dogs. Just as Chung predicted, the shadow mages used their hound summoning skill. Seeing this, Chung felt a surge of triumph as he realized he had successfully broken their combat pattern. Now, because the shadow mages had no means to successfully lock onto a target for an attack, they had to abruptly switch from the shadow arrow skill to the hound summoning skill. Their AI logic became corrupted. As a result, the shadow mages started to endlessly summon hounds. Even if their magic was depleted, they would wait until they had enough mana to repeat the skill over and over. This bug could result in a massive number of hounds being summoned. In the end, as long as one eliminated the shadow mages, the hounds would perish along with them effortlessly. Chung reasoned that if he performed it this way, he could harvest a vast amount of experience from a few hundred hounds. He then decided to take a brief nap, planning to wait for the shadow mages to spawn more hounds. The scene then cuts to 8 hours later in the audience chamber, where the students were amazed to see that Senior Lu Jingjing was, in fact, the first to change her profession to the Mighty Fire Archmage just a moment ago. She had been in second place, but in a brilliant flash, Lu Jingjing reversed her fate and became the first to attain level 10. The students also saw that Senior Sunk had become a powerful swordsman. They wondered if Sunk would be capable of defeating the great boss and acquiring the legendary Awakening Stone. Currently, the top 10 positions have been monopolized by the elite rocket class. You must strive to get into that class. In the following year's class division examination, John Lay noticed that more and more exceptional students were progressively starting to distinguish themselves. He also wondered about Cheng's current location and what rank he held. When John Lay glanced at the leaderboard, he was astounded to see that Chung was in the very last place. The students began to mock Chung openly, who had luckily stumbled upon a dead mouse. The top position had been reclaimed by its rightful owner. A girl also remarked smugly, saying that was precisely what she had been about to say. She questioned how there could possibly be a true genius, already in the third year of high school, who had not yet been discovered. John Lay thought that the secret realm would only remain open for 12 hours, and given Cheng's current leveling trajectory, he was worried Cheng wouldn't even be able to reach level 6. Worse, he doubted Cheng could vanquish the final boss, Zalin, and awaken any talent at all. It was announced that only 4 hours remained until the examination's conclusion. But suddenly, someone urged Zhang Lei to look at the leaderboard, as the last place rank had begun to move. When Zhang Lei saw the leaderboard, he was dumbfounded to see that Chang had started to ascend in rank at an unbelievable speed. Zhang Lei, tense, wondered how Chang had accomplished this. The scene then rewinds in time to just 1 minute prior, where Chang awakens from his rejuvenating slumber. Upon surveying his surroundings, Chang was shocked to see so many hounds, and wondered if there were perhaps a few too many. Chung noted that the sight of around 400 hounds was truly a terrifying spectacle. He took out the Gatling gun, and before unleashing hell, he joyfully thought, "Let's see how many levels these hounds can grant me." Chung began to fire, mowing down the shadow mages and their dogs in a glorious killing spree. He eliminated many of them, and with every kill, his stat points surged as he rapidly leveled up. Chung smirked and declared that leveling up in this manner was incredibly gratifying. He added that killing the shadow mages one by one would have been far too exhausting. Suddenly, his information screen began displaying notifications that his passive skills were now leveling up. This made Chung incredibly happy, as the passive growth potential appeared remarkably strong. He mused that once it attained higher levels, if a passive that was always 100% guaranteed to activate would finally appear. The scene shifts back to the present, where Chang has ascended to the number 1 spot on the leaderboard. All the students were utterly shocked to witness it. They murmured in disbelief that in a single minute, Chang had surged from last place to first place by gaining an impossible 10 levels. They wondered when Jiangshan College had ever produced such a person. They even started to think of Chang as a monster, because compared to the entire nation, being level 13 would place Chang within the top 3. One student even began to tear at his hair, shouting that he was growing far too old, and had never witnessed such a ludicrous thing. He wondered, just who in the hell was this Chang piano? At that moment, Xiao Erlong, Chang's own homeroom teacher, proudly told everyone that Chang was his student, and asked if it wasn't impressive how incredible Chang was. Hearing this, Zhang Lei moved menacingly close to Xiao Erlong. Xiao tense? Asked, "What is it, Director Zhang?" Zhang Lei roared, demanding what Xiao had been doing all this time, and how utterly blind he could have been. Xiao, filled with regret, sadly offered his apology to Zhang, realizing that, with such a phenomenal youth, he should have reported it much sooner. Zhang Lei replied that it seemed he was also getting old to make such a grave oversight. He added that Cheng's raw talent could be considered Jiangcheng College's most profound talent since its very founding. The scene returns to Chang, where he was being congratulated by the information screen. It informed him that it was now time for him to select a profession. Chang considered that, in his previous world, he had stood at the absolute pinnacle of Genesis, acquiring all the god-tier titles for every single class. However, there was only one legendary path he had yet to walk, and that path was as a vagrant, a special class that does not undergo a profession change. A vagrant can wield any piece of equipment and would not be hampered by any class restrictions. In this way, the combination of various equipment attributes could be exploited to its absolute fullest potential, making its application virtually limitless. At the same time, depending on the current combat situation, a combination of gear with perfect attributes could be effortlessly equipped. But its weaknesses were also quite clear. The killing power was not sufficient, while there were abundant skills, because he was fundamentally professionless. They were all basic, rudimentary skills. Chang also knew that he could blaze through the early game, but in the later stages he would be utterly dominated. There was no method to compensate for this flaw with skills alone, but for the time being, he possessed the all-powerful passive system, which resolved the vagrant class's single fatal weakness. This allowed him to unleash the vagrant class's power to its zenith. At that instant, his information screen showed that, because Chang had never allocated his stat points, it automatically bound the vagrant's singular hidden class, Spellbender. Chang, utterly confused, wondered, hidden class, Spellbender. Back in the auditorium, Zhang Lei was horrified to see Chang select the vagrant class. Even the students were screaming, "If Chang doesn't want that incredible talent, he should just give it to us, since he could have chosen anything, but he just had to select the absolute worst of the worst." Zhang angrily roars at Xiao, demanding to know what he has been teaching Chang all this time. He then yells, "Honestly, a vagrant class, what kind of delinquent is Chang becoming?" Xiao sadly explains that he has been gravely misunderstood, saying Chang had consistently chosen the berserker profession. Whenever he was asked about his future aspirations, Dong declared that selecting the vagrant class, a garbage-tier profession like this, is tantamount to forfeiting one's entire future. Zhang views this as a monumentally foolish decision by Chang. One student asks if the vagrant class is truly that terrible, wondering if Chang might have some master plan in mind. In response, another boy clarifies that the greatest strength of the vagrant class is its capacity to use skills and gear from any profession. In the initial stages, a person can wield a wide array of skills to battle monsters, granting them immense freedom. He even confesses he desires that versatility for himself. But one can only dominate through the early game, because in the mid to late game, the person is unable to change professions. All of their skills remain at the most primary level, and their attack power will simply be insufficient. As a result, the person can be easily crushed by their opponents. That boy also laments that such a phenomenal talent has been utterly squandered on a profession Potential? What kind of future could we possibly speak of? In that instant, our perspective shifts to the hallowed divine realm exam hall. Our protagonist, Chung, was proudly declaring that the vagrant class was forged for him alone. His unique passive, the exchange system, was the key. It was the perfect counter to the class's critical flaw of being unable to inflict sufficient damage, and with the memories from his past life, he was certain he could unleash the vagrant class's hidden, godlike potential to its absolute peak. But he was still puzzled by the term spellbinder. Cheng's curiosity was piqued. What was this mysterious path? He resolved to uncover its secrets at once. With a thought, he summoned the information panel for the spellbinder. The system window revealed a startling restriction. He was forbidden from learning skills from the academy or any faction, a shackle placed upon him by the world. His only path to power was learning support skills dropped by vanquished bosses. But with this curse came a blessing. He would be granted 2 additional stat points per level. Furthermore, another decree. All instance dungeons would be locked to their most hellish difficulty. Yet, upon clearing them, he would be rewarded with a direct level up. Reading this, Chung was momentarily floored, wondering what this meant. Forbidden from actively learning any skills, but you must conquer a dungeon's final guardian just to claim them? A spark of exhilaration ignited within Chung. This was destiny's call. He then declared with absolute confidence that he knew the secrets of every instance dungeon within the world of Apocalypse. This knowledge was a trump card that no ordinary person could ever possess. It was decided. The spellbinder path seemed tailor-made for his ascent. The first priority was clear: amplify his passive damage output. So he chose to pour his points into increasing his attack speed first. Chung immediately set out to hunt the nearby monsters. He dispatched them with a blur of speed and flawless precision. As he fought, he noted that by using these stat points, it wasn't just a number on a screen increasing. His very flesh and bone were being reborn, truly enhanced. Attack speed, fluid movement, even his critical strike chance. This world was simply too wondrous. Suddenly, a unique item materialized before his very eyes. A tome that radiated a dark aura, the Book of Demons. Chung instantly recognized it. It appeared to be a mundane item, yet it was the key to a legendary quest. Upon opening the book and deciphering its contents, Cheng's heart pounded with excitement. He realized he had nearly forgotten about this monumental hidden mission. He made a bold decision. The final boss could wait for now. His new focus was to track down every hidden artifact required to unlock the full potential of this secret quest. With only a single hour remaining in the examination, a grand announcement echoed as the trial approached its climax. The students would inevitably converge upon the final boss's domain. The voice from the heavens continued, declaring that their ultimate challenge was now at hand. As long as a single person could defeat the Guardian and make contact with the awakening stone behind it, only then would they be deemed worthy of passing the examination. Meanwhile, a young prodigy named Mac had reached the final stage, standing before the boss, Zaylin. Mac thought to himself, if he could just vanquish this foul beast, Zaylin, he would finally achieve his grand awakening. With a war cry, Mac charged toward Zaylin, but the boss unleashed its terrifying skill. Sacrifice, a dark ritual that inflicted continuous, agonizing damage to a single target, while simultaneously casting a debilitating curse, designed to cripple the attacker's fundamental stats. Every second counted. Mac was in a desperate race against time. He knew that if Zaylin managed to complete its wretched curse, his defeat would be absolute and unavoidable. However, he held unwavering faith in his own blistering speed, believing it was more than enough to overwhelm the boss. Before the ritual could be completed, but just before Mac could strike Zaylin, Zaylin's monstrous bodyguards slammed into him with brutal force, sending him crashing violently to the ground. Before Mac could even regain his footing, the bodyguards descended upon him once more. In that instant, his vision went black. Mac's consciousness was violently ejected from the examination grounds. Witnessing this, the other students were aghast, whispering amongst themselves in disbelief. Wasn't that prodigy ranked in the top 50 of this entire year's class? How could he have been so utterly defeated? This generation of so-called geniuses had stumbled into an absolute nightmare. In all the years prior, the final challenge had always been a simple level 10 elite stage boss. But this year's trial was horrifyingly different. This year's secret realm, unleashed a monstrous boss that demanded a full party of 5 to even challenge. To face such an impossible challenge alone was truly a cruel twist of fate. Indeed, at the very moment Zaylin was casting its dark magic, it was at its most vulnerable, open to a decisive close-range assault. However, with those brutish, thick-skinned beasts acting as an impenetrable living shield, it seemed utterly impossible for anyone to land the killing blow. They even started to recall old rumors. Wasn't this realm sealed for a decade? Precisely because its difficulty was deemed insurmountable? Why in the world did the Education Commission decide to unseal it now? The scene then cuts back to our hero, Chung, who was now stealthily infiltrating Zaylin's lair. Chung mused to himself that simply gathering the artifacts for his legendary hidden quest had already consumed nearly a full precious hour. Fortunately, Chung arrived just in time for the grand finale against the final boss. As Chung stepped into Zaylin's domain, the boss immediately commanded its monstrous bodyguards to annihilate the intruder. Observing the beast's speed, Chung remarked, "It appears these thick-skinned brutes are surprisingly quick on their feet, but it was a tragic shame for them, because they were nowhere near as fast as he was." Chung moved like a phantom, his gymnast-like agility evading their strikes, and he effortlessly dismantled the beasts, one after another. After the battle, Chung coolly assessed the situation. As long as there is no protection from its green-skinned minions, Zaylin, who is currently deep in its casting animation, will have absolutely no way to evade my assault. Zaylin attempted to unleash its sacrifice skill to retaliate, but Chung moved like lightning, kicking Zaylin with immense force, sending the beast soaring helplessly through the air. Knowing that the window of opportunity was fleeting, Chung instantly drew a cartridge gun and began unleashing a volley of shots at Zaylin. Even after Chung unloaded 10 rounds directly into Zaylin's massive frame, it astonishingly caused barely a scratch. Chung noted with cold precision that every single one of his 10 bullets had hit their mark perfectly. It seemed he hadn't lost the god-tier skill that earned him the moniker human aiming machine back in his previous world. Zaylin then roared, entering a berserk state of fury. In response, Chung instantly switched his combat style. A smirk played on his lips as he thought, "Leveling up my close-quarters combat truly makes life simple. It allows me to avoid ever exposing a single weak point." With blinding speed, Chung struck directly at Zaylin's legs. As he moved, he narrated his brilliant strategy. A standard sweeping kick would only make an opponent stumble for a moment. But with no apology in his voice, Chung explained that his attack was aimed at Zaylin's most brittle leg bones. The moment his kick connected, they would instantly turn to dust. The true challenge of this entire instance dungeon was the perfect synergy between the trio of monsters. Zaylin's own combat prowess wasn't particularly high, but when bolstered by the ferocious defense of its 2 bodyguards, the trio became an unstoppable, deadly force. Once the bodyguards successfully bought enough time for Zaylin to cast sacrifice, they would become an unbeatable wall of destruction. So, the very second Chung saw Zaylin lose its bodyguard's protection, he seized the golden opportunity. Chung then struck, knowing with absolute certainty that Zaylin would crumble with a single blow. On the other side of the portal, both Jingjing and Sunk emerged from the exam. Jingjing arrogantly declared to Sunk, "It seems this time, first place is mine for the taking." Sunk simply replied with a defeated yes, conceding that her victory was certain. He even offered his congratulations, stating that the outcome of this exam was ultimately a result of his own blunders. Therefore, he wasn't bitter about his second-place finish. But suddenly, Sunk froze, urgently telling Jingjing to wait. He pointed a trembling finger at the name at the very top of the rankings. It wasn't hers. Sunk yelled out in disbelief, "How is this possible? A person must achieve level 10 before they can even change their class." Jingjing's face contorted in rage as she screamed, "How could I have actually lost to that perpetual last-place loser, Li Hong?" Other students rushed over, reassuring her with their words. "Don't worry, the first-place rank must certainly belong to you." "That's right," they chimed in. "Li Hong is nothing but a level 7 nobody. Does he honestly believe he could defeat 3 level 8 elite monsters? Li Hong must have found a way to cheat," another student added. "Director Zhang has already summoned him to the dean's office for interrogation." Sunk sneered, "Jingjing, you already know how the absolute trash from the ordinary class will stoop to any low to get ahead." Jingjing agreed, spitting that if Li Hong truly did cheat, it wouldn't be the slightest bit surprising. The scene shifts to the dean's office, where Lu Yamen, Cheng's own education commissioner, was roaring, demanding to know if Li Hong had cheated.
Li Hong makli respunda, no.
He insisted he hadn't cheated. He had simply performed exceptionally well on the exam. Yamen bellowed that Li Hong was still refusing to confess the truth. Just moments ago, when he questioned Li Hong about the boss's appearance, the boy knew absolutely nothing. Li Hong still feebly tried to claim he cleared the examination through his own power. Yamen then roared, "Do you want to become the first student in the entire history of Jianxin College to be expelled from these grounds?" Yamen added that the accomplice who assisted Li Hong in cheating would also be hunted down and investigated thoroughly by the school. He vowed they wouldn't let either of them escape justice. Hearing this, Li Hong broke down, feeling immense pressure, and began to confess everything. "It was me. I kept begging Cheng to do me this one favor." He admitted that all of the fault was his own. "Please, Commissioner Yamen, do not bring punishment down upon Cheng." Li Hong then revealed, "Cheng told me that once I reached the final chamber, I would discover a fork in the path. He instructed me to continue down the path on the right, and it would allow me to circumvent all of the monsters and arrive directly behind the final boss." Li Hong continued, "Since their line of sight is completely fixed, it wouldn't be triggered to attack me. To claim victory, I had to touch the awakening stone with my absolute top speed." Hearing this entire confession, Yamen was utterly stunned and asked, "What? Does Cheng Kaimo's school actually harbor another hidden, monstrous genius?" He hastily spun to Zhang Lei and demanded, "Report to me about Cheng's examination performance." At that moment, Zhang Lei shared the shocking news. Cheng just shattered a historical record, skyrocketing all the way to level 13, but he still hasn't returned from the secret realm. He then presented Yamen with the complete video recording of Cheng's examination. Watching the footage, a booming laugh erupted from Yamen as he said, "This boy, Cheng, his future knows absolutely no bounds." When the other students finally emerged from the secret realm, they were not at all surprised to see Jingjing and Sunk already waiting outside, having already finished their examination. The crowd was still buzzing with questions about Cheng, as he was the only one who had not yet emerged from the secret realm. With a mere 15 minutes left until the examination concluded, they theorized that even if he had managed to reach a high level, it would be utterly meaningless. He would still fail the entire exam. The scene cuts back to Cheng, who was now standing just inches from the awakening stone. He paused, contemplating that once he made contact with it, the entire examination would instantly draw to a close. Cheng then decided to delay his victory a little longer before touching the awakening stone. He resolved that he would first complete the legendary hidden mission before concluding the examination on his own terms. Cheng then presented the artifacts required for the hidden ritual: the Book of Demons, burning obsidian, withered wood, a translucent crystal, a broken sword, and finally, the hound's skull. Cheng knew that the unification of all 6 of these powerful items would summon the great and terrible hidden boss, Taman. As soon as he completed the ritual, the colossal monster Taman erupted from the ground, roaring, "Who calls my name? Who dares disturb my slumber?" Indeed, Taman was a level 12 elite boss and a fearsome warrior of the demon race. It immediately locked its demonic eyes onto Cheng. Without a shred of hesitation, it charged directly toward Cheng, using its massive sword to cleave the ground with immense force, causing the very earth to shatter and tremble. Cheng, however, easily evaded the cataclysmic attack with his godlike agility. As the dust and smoke settled, Taman saw that Cheng was still standing, unharmed. In that moment, a thought crossed Cheng's mind. It's no wonder Taman is the legendary hidden boss. Cheng analyzed his foe. Taman is, in fact, far more powerful than the combined might of Zalan's entire 3-monster team. Its greatest asset lies in its overwhelming strength, but its fatal flaw is painfully obvious. Its agility is laughably poor. Cheng knew that as long as he could keep Taman on the defensive and completely lock down its attacks, he would be more than capable of defeating it. Cheng then openly taunted Taman, "With those clumsy, lumbering movements, why don't you scurry back to your cave and train for another 1,000 years?" Hearing this insult, Taman flew into a blind rage and charged aggressively at Cheng. In response, Cheng instantly utilized a primary skill of the grappler class, Sand Throw. He used it to blind Taman and create the perfect opening for his next assault. From this single attack, Taman was plunged into a state of total blindness. Indeed, Sand throw launches a handful of dirt and sand directly at an enemy's face. After a successful hit on the target, the enemy will suffer a drastically reduced hit percentage, as well as a severely diminished field of vision, lasting for 3 seconds. Chung explained that while sand throw itself isn't particularly powerful, it is the single most effective move to use against a heavy and sluggish opponent, like Taman, in order to completely neutralize their movements. In that moment, Taman's passive defensive ability was triggered, lasting for a single second, unleashing the skill, Overlord's Control. Chung conceded that Taman was truly a formidable beast, well deserving of the title of Hidden Boss. But now it was his turn to unleash his assault. Chung activated his pre-placed, self-detonating robot, and decided to initiate his attack with a slide tackle to close the distance to Taman. Even after the hit connected, Chung knew that Taman was an incredibly heavy unit, so a simple slide tackle would never be enough to trip him. That is why his follow-up move was to slam Taman with a devastating uppercut. After the blow connected, Chung hoped to plunge his foe into a dizzy state. The moment Taman became disoriented, Chung moved in to viciously backstab him with a dagger. Following this, Chung delivered a powerful front kick directly to Taman. The force of the kick sent Taman flying towards the self-detonating robot, which erupted in a massive explosion at that moment. The blast from the explosion weakened Taman significantly, but he was still desperately trying to climb back to his feet. Seeing this, Chung furiously charged at the downed Taman, shouting and demanding that he not even entertain the thought of getting back up. After being struck yet again by Chung, Taman collapsed heavily to the ground. Chung then declared that no matter how powerful Taman was, as long as he was kept completely suppressed throughout the fight, he would be utterly incapable of inflicting any harm. Chung then aimed his blast gun directly at Taman and fired, smiling as he bid farewell to the demon. The very instant Chung defeated Taman, his name skyrocketed to the number 1 rank on the leaderboard. All of the students were utterly dumbfounded, shouting in disbelief, wondering how Chung, who had not even officially awakened yet, had somehow seized the first-place position. The students continued to question, "Aren't the final rankings based on who finishes the examination first? This makes absolutely no sense at all." They roared in unison, accusing Chung of being a dirty cheater. The students, and nearly everyone else, began to agree that cheating might actually be a real possibility. After all, how else could anyone explain the fact that Chung still hadn't come out? Perhaps he was simply too afraid to face the judgment of everyone. Regardless, once the time limit was reached, everyone still inside the secret realm would be forcibly ejected. So, they decided to simply wait and watch the inevitable spectacle unfold. Yaman then confidently told Zhang that these children knew nothing. He proclaimed that Chung would absolutely emerge before the examination concluded. At that moment, Zhang Lei wondered to himself that it had been a very long time since he'd seen Commissioner Yaman. So incredibly excited, he puzzled over why Sir Yaman was so certain that Chung would be able to depart the examination grounds in time. With only 60 seconds remaining on the clock until the exam's end, the scene returns to Chung. The system screen flashed, displaying that for conquering the hidden boss, his completion reward had been massively increased by 50%. Chung received even more information about his additional rewards, and he couldn't help but exclaim, "It seems that all the monumental effort I poured into this hidden mission was more than worth its weight in gold." However, since Chung had already transitioned his class to the Vagrant Spellbinder, he questioned if the Awakening Stone would even have any effect on him. Chung then reached out his hand and made contact with the Awakening Stone. After doing so, the system congratulated him for his successful completion of the exam. His awakened talent revealed that his transformation skill had now ascended to level 2. Because of his unique Spellbinder class, he could now transform 2 additional active skills into passives. This brought the total number of skills he could now transform to 2. As a bonus, Chung was also rewarded with a pair of legendary boots of travel. Additionally, for vanquishing the hidden boss, he received a primary book of critical hits, which would permanently boost his critical hit rate by a staggering 20%. Absorbing the information about his rewards, Chung was overjoyed that he could now transform 2 more of his skills. First, he chose to transform the Gatling gun, and now, when using any firearm to launch an assault, there was a 25% chance to randomly unleash a volley of 10 10 Gatling gun bullets, all of which were guaranteed a 100% hit rate. Chung was ecstatic after reading this. He realized that with a guaranteed 100% hit rate, he would conserve an immense amount of effort in all his future battles. He even wondered if he could now potentially defeat monsters of a much higher level than himself. Chung shared that when battling monsters of the same level, all of his combat attributes would be automatically suppressed by the system. This was especially true for his hit rate and critical hit rate. He explained that, more often than not, he would be killed by the monster long before he could ever defeat it. However, with this new passive skill, as long as he could simply stay alive, he would now be able to gradually wear down a high-level boss until it was utterly annihilated. With only one transformation remaining, Chung deliberated carefully. He understood there was a finite limit to how many transformations he could perform, so he needed to select the most efficient skill to maximize his overall combat potential. Chung decided to transform his airborne skill into a powerful new passive. The system named this new skill Wide Swipe. After this incredible transformation, when attacking, there was now a 10% chance of knocking down all enemies within a massive 10-meter radius. Chung was overjoyed. Compared to the original airborne skill that required a massive amount of energy, the new Wide Swipe only consumed a minuscule amount of energy to activate. With its enormous attacking range, Wide Swipe could now knock down entire hordes of enemies, making it an even more perfect addition to Cheng's arsenal. He then commanded the system to display his current status window. Gazing at the status board, Chung noted with satisfaction that his combat power was already approaching 10,000. He thought to himself that once he embarked on his journey to the mainland of Apocalypse, he would at least possess a respectable fighting chance. The moment had finally arrived for him to depart the secret realm. The scene shifts back to the grand auditorium. The system announced that the examination had officially concluded, and the secret realm was now closing its gates. At that very moment, a blinding ray of light shot out from the realm's portal. To everyone's utter astonishment, it was Chung who had emerged victorious, fully awakened and having conquered the realm's trials. Yaman was floored, realizing that Chung had actually pulled off the impossible, meaning his future potential would truly be limitless. A female student, shocked by the spectacle, asked, "Is Chung showing absolutely no emotional reaction? Is this the calm and collected demeanor of a true powerhouse?" At this, the other students roared that Chung was nothing more than a filthy cheater, and they demanded that both Chung and Li Hong be cast out from the school. They even implored Commissioner Yaman to invalidate Cheng's results. In that instant, Yaman strode forward and bellowed, demanding that every single person fall silent at once. Hearing his command, all the students immediately quieted down, placing their hands over their mouths in fear. Yaman then calmly asked Chung if he had truly passed the examination. Chung was startled, realizing the voice had come from directly behind him. He wondered when Commissioner Yaman had managed to approach so closely. Chung first replied with a simple and confident yes. Hearing this, a wide smile spread across Yaman's face as he declared it a momentous occasion, and that Chung was completely deserving of the first-place honor. Sunk immediately protested to Yaman that there was clearly something suspicious about Cheng's results, asking how it was even possible for someone to emerge last from the portal, but still be awarded the first-place rank. Jingjing also sided with Sunk and shouted, demanding a full explanation from Yaman. She cried that the school couldn't just allow them to be humiliated like this, without a proper explanation of what had transpired. The entire student body erupted into a chorus of shouts, demanding undeniable proof or calling for Chung, the cheating dog, to be immediately expelled. Yaman, now furious, roared back at the ignorant students, calling them nothing more than a bunch of frogs at the bottom of a well. Yaman then explained that the reason Chung KMO skyrocketed to first place out of nowhere was because he was the sole examinee who had successfully slain the legendary hidden boss. Yaman asked, Chung defeated an additional level 12 elite boss, so if he doesn't deserve the first place rank, are you trying to tell me that one of you fools deserves it more? Hearing this revelation, both Jingjing and Sunk shockingly asked in unison, "What? There's actually a hidden boss?" They confessed that they had never even heard of such a thing, and it certainly wasn't mentioned in any of their textbooks. They wondered, then how in the world did Chung know about it? At that moment, Sui Qin, the esteemed homeroom teacher of the elite rocket class, thought to herself, A pathetic student from the normal class managed to seize first place? Isn't this a blatant and humiliating slap to our face? Still filled with skepticism, Sui-kin wondered about this hidden boss. She concluded Chang must be a cheater. She decided then and there that she must expose his web of lies in front of everyone. Sui-kin leaped into the center of the auditorium and asked, "If that's the case, then why doesn't student Chang share with the rest of us?" Hearing this, Chang ferociously and coldly retorted, "And why, exactly, should I tell you anything about it?" Sui-kin, completely stunned by his audacity, shockingly asked, "What did you just say?" All the other students were equally floored, as Sui-kin was the youngest homeroom teacher in the entire history of the Academy's elite rocket class, and Chang had just dared to publicly humiliate her. They all thought that Chang was in for a world of pain, as teacher Sui-kin was known for being incredibly forceful, and she would certainly never let such blatant disrespect go unpunished. Sunk, hearing this, furiously drew his blade and roared, "How dare you speak in such a manner to the respected Sui-kin ma'am?" He then formally challenged Chang to a life-or-death duel. Furious at the flagrant disrespect, all the students cheered with wild excitement, urging Sunk to go and teach Chang a brutal lesson. They wanted him to help unleash their collective anger, and let Chang personally experience the overwhelming power of the second strongest student in the entire school. In response, Chang ferociously shot Sunk a strange look and asked, "Does Sunk honestly believe he is even worthy of a duel with me?" Hearing Chang's words, all the other students were absolutely shocked, and angrily began to shout that Senior Sunk has challenged Chang to a formal duel. This means Senior Sunk is actually thinking highly of Chang. They screamed at Chang, calling him an arrogant and pretentious prick who only knew how to run his mouth and possessed no real skill. At that moment, Jingjing stepped forward and placed a hand on Sunk's shoulder, asking, "Since student Chang is so unbelievably confident, if I were to join forces with Sunk, would we then be worthy of a duel against him?" In response, Chang simply asked Jingjing, "And who might you be?" Hearing this, Jingjing became utterly frustrated and angrily replied, "Do you really not know who I am? I am the undisputed belle of Zhang Cheng's school." Chang casually responded while picking his nose, "Never heard of you." Hearing this, Sunk became completely enraged and shouted, "Chang, you are truly taking things too far. If you are really looking down upon the students of the elite rocket class, I will teach you a lesson you will never forget." Sunk roared that he demanded an official arena duel against Chang. Hearing this, Sui-kin thought to herself that the sacred arena serves as a battleground for true awakeners, and to refuse a challenge made there would mean having one's reputation utterly obliterated, and to be completely disdained by all of their peers. Furthermore, if Chang truly had cheated his way to first place, then he would definitely be no match whatsoever for Sunk. Cheng, however, responded with a predatory smirk, saying, "Since Sunk is in such a desperate rush to die, I will most certainly accommodate him." Seeing Cheng's cold response, Yaman thought to himself that this boy Cheng's temper was even more explosive than his own. He figured this would be a perfect opportunity to witness Cheng's true, unbridled strength. Yaman then announced that, since both Sunk and Chang had agreed to the formal arena duel, he would personally create a battlefield for them. In just a few seconds, a massive stone arena suddenly erupted from the ground. Yaman then told Sunk that he hoped Sunk would give it his all and not harbor any regrets. Sunk responded with a firm and confident yes, then turned to face Chang, saying he wanted to see what Chang was truly capable of achieving. In response, Chang snapped back at Sunk, telling him to stop spewing nonsense and to not waste any more of his time. Without waiting a second longer, Chang leaped into the arena in a flash and called out to Sunk, "Let's just begin the battle." Sunk, completely infuriated by Cheng's arrogant behavior, attacked him with his full, unrestrained power, shouting, "Don't you dare regret this!" As he charged towards Chang, Sunk launched his assault with his signature pinnacle speed, activating his S-rank innate talent. This incredible ability allowed him to momentarily boost his movement speed and attack speed by a massive 50%, making him an even more terrifying opponent in a duel. The students watching from the auditorium were absolutely electrified. They recognized that Sunk had activated the swordsman's ultimate skill, displacement. They never imagined that Senior Sunk's innate talent would elevate this already powerful skill to such a godlike level. They couldn't even track where Sunk had vanished to. Sunk taunted. It looks like Chung is only good at running his mouth. With that, he unleashed his attack on Chung, shouting for him to die. However, Chung effortlessly dodged the seemingly impossible attack and smiled, asking Sunk, "Is that all? What other parlor tricks can you perform?" The student audience was stunned to see Chung evading the attack so effortlessly. They wondered how he could have possibly done it. They hadn't even been able to see him move from his original spot. They speculated if Chung had awakened the S-rank talent transformation, which might have boosted his agility and speed to monstrous levels, allowing him to dodge Sunk's attacks so casually. Sunk claimed it was merely a coincidence that Chung had dodged his blade. He then attacked once more, shouting that this time, Chung would not escape. His most powerful attack combo. Sunk attacks with a wide slash, but Chung evades it. Sunk then charges with an uppercut, but Chung parries it with his own blade. Just as Chung is launched into the air, Sunk uses his displacement skill to teleport directly above him. Sunk then shouts that he has won the duel, and goes for a devastating plunging strike on Chung. A massive blast rocks the entire arena, leading everyone to believe that Chung had been defeated. Even Jingjing smiled and praised Sunk for his impressive and decisive move. At this moment, Sunk lets out a victorious laugh and declares that no one can escape unscathed from his pinnacle speed. But before Sunk could even finish his arrogant words, from out of nowhere, Chung delivered a powerful and brutal kick directly to his face, sending him flying across the arena. Seeing this, Sui Qin is completely stunned and wonders in shock what had just transpired, while a surprised Yamen realizes his judgment about Cheng's power was spot on. Chung then activates his passive skill and unleashes a devastating ripple slash, utterly defeating Sunk. Chung comments that Sunk's so-called pinnacle speed is still far too slow, compared to his own near 100 points of raw agility. The students were in a state of shock. They were unable to see anything clearly, as the battle concluded so quickly. Sunk, despite being a certified genius, was completely annihilated in under 30 seconds. Chung then coldly asks Jingjing if she still wishes to fight. Terrified and tense, Jingjing quickly responds with a terrified, "No," realizing that she is indeed unworthy to even challenge him. The audience immediately began addressing Chung as "Sir," admitting they were foolish and ignorant to accuse him of cheating. They apologized profusely and declared that Chung was their new god. Li Hong then asked the students, surprised, if they were really changing their tune so quickly. Just a few moments ago, they were viciously cursing Chung, and now they were all worshipping him as a deity. They shamelessly responded that they are professionals and always pay respect to the strong. Chung completely and utterly deserves to be the #1 genius of Jiangqing. Even the female students began to ask if Chung had a girlfriend, to ask for his number. Jingjing, feeling an unfamiliar pull towards Chung, couldn't help but think she had never imagined he possessed such overwhelming power. She was utterly bewildered, wondering why this strange new emotion was stirring. She realized, with a jolt, that she was actually captivated by Chung. On the other side of the arena, Yamen mused that with such godlike reaction time and flawless timing of his skills, Cheng's talent vastly surpassed his own. From his younger days, Yamen believed that perhaps Chung could become a legendary 5th-tier god. This boy was a true heaven-sent genius, a once-in-a-generation talent who, no matter what sacrifices were necessary, must be kept within the walls of Jiangcheng. Yamen then made a grand announcement on behalf of the school's administration. Due to Cheng's monumental and outstanding performance, he would be bestowed with 1 million blue star currency and the legendary title of Heaven's Pride Student. Hearing this, the entire crowd was floored, erupting in shouts of utter disbelief. Li Hong, Sui Qin, and Zhang were even more profoundly shocked. Upon hearing that Chung was being granted the legendary title of Heaven's Pride, a smirk appeared on Cheng's face. He thought that, judging by everyone's reaction, this title must be something truly magnificent. He wondered if he could somehow exchange it for cash. Zhang then shared that it has been more than 2 long decades since a Heaven's Pride student has last appeared in Jiangqing. The previous student to hold that title is now a mighty 4th-tier professional. The average awakener might only ever hope to reach the 2nd-tier professional rank within their entire lifetime. In all of Jiangshan, only the education committee head, Yamen, and a select few others have ever reached the 3rd tier. After this, Zhang stopped speaking, his point made. He realized that if this monumental title was given to Chung, it signified something truly world-shaking. Sui Qin thought to herself that it likely meant Chang would, at the absolute very least, become a fourth-tier professional in the future. She also resolved that she must bring this future legend into her rocket class. If she became the mentor of a future fourth-tier powerhouse, she would undoubtedly acquire immense fame and recognition. Sui Qin then glided towards Chang and asked if he was at all interested in becoming the class monitor of her prestigious rocket class. She even offered to provide him with personal private tutoring for the entire month leading up to the exams. Hearing this, the students of the rocket class were utterly stunned. They began to whisper that teacher Sui Qin was their untouchable goddess. They confessed they would be willing to do anything, even sacrifice their lives, to be tutored by her in private. Chang seemed to be basking in unbelievable luck, achieving instant fame and a direct path into the elite rocket class. But to everyone's absolute shock, Chang pulled back his hand and coldly told Sui Qin that she was not qualified to teach him. Chang even declared that it wasn't just Sui Qin, but every single teacher in the Jianxing school was unfit to guide him. He then asked with a sharp tone, "Are any of you vagrants?" Sui Qin, enraged, shouted, asking how Chang, being only a mere level 14, could dare think she was unfit to teach him. Yaman calmly responded that it was alright, as no one can breach the fundamental barrier of different classes to become a suitable mentor for another. Yaman added that, after a class change, furthermore, they possess zero experience with the skills and combos of the vagrant class. Yaman concluded that throughout this entire vast nation, there wasn't a single soul who would be capable of teaching Chang. His future, therefore, is a solitary path he must walk alone. Yaman then addressed Chang directly, stating that the path of the vagrant is one fraught with infinite challenges, and he hoped Chang would not come to regret this decision as he journeyed forward. Chang replied that since he personally chose this road, he would never regret it. Deep within, Chang felt a sense of calm, knowing that he possessed the ultimate support of the passive transformation system. Yaman nodded and said, "Excellent," before adding that since no one present could teach Chang, he would bestow upon him special authorization for independent study. He added that he greatly looked forward to Chang's performance in the upcoming unified examination, which would be held in 1 month's time. Hearing this, the students were completely astounded, as this was the very first time a student was ever granted such special authorization. It was a truly unprecedented privilege. The girls in the crowd were becoming more and more mesmerized by Chang. Chang thanked Yaman for the grand favor and said he had one question to ask. Yaman replied, telling Chang to feel free to ask him anything at all. The entire hall waited with bated breath for Chang's profound question. But to their utter amazement, Chang simply asked, "When will the 1 million blue star currency be deposited into my account?" The scene fades to some time later, where every major newspaper featured news of Chang on their front page. Hordes of news reporters even swarmed the school to interview Chang. The reporters desperately asked Zhang about Chang's future plans, specifically, which prestigious university was Chang planning to grace with his attendance. They also pleaded to know why Chang chose the mysterious vagrant class. The reporters begged, asking if they could have a personal interview with Chang. Zhang, feeling immense pressure from being mobbed by so many reporters, nervously replied that student Chang was not currently on school grounds. The scene then shifts to the Grand Apocalypse Management Association building. As Chang entered, he thought to himself that all of the required procedures to enter the Apocalypse mainland were quite simple and direct. Chang's identity verification was swiftly and easily completed. Afterward, Chang recalled the world's history. 100 years ago, when demonic monsters descended upon Blue Star from the Great Void and nearly drove the entire human race to the brink of extinction, they mysteriously retreated on their own accord. In order for humanity to rise up against this great apocalypse, they discovered the legendary mainland of the apocalypse through a crack in the void where the monsters had first emerged. This dimensional crack provided a gateway for humans to freely enter and prepare for the coming war. Soon after, the great frenzied era of humanity began. The entire world began to pour into the mainland of the apocalypse. This new world gradually transformed into a brutal battlefield, where awakeners from every nation fought for power and survival. Only awakeners who possessed truly immense talent could ever hope to establish themselves on the mainland of the apocalypse. Chang knew that compared to the simple simulated area back at school, there was so much more that one could achieve on the mainland of the apocalypse. As Chang was being teleported, he focused on his goal. His most important objective was to rapidly ascend to level 20 and use his absolute, overwhelming strength to dominate the unified exam. Cheng and the others were transported to the perilous Shattered Archipelago area, where the recommended level for survival was 13 to 18. Seeing this familiar landscape, Chung felt a wave of nostalgia. It reminded him precisely of the apocalypse from his past life, bringing back a flood of vivid memories. At that moment, some players were shouting out, asking if anyone wanted to party up and form a team. They were recruiting to slay monsters and level up. They desperately invited others to come and join their ranks. Seeing this, a knowing smile crossed Cheng's face. He thought that when a novice first steps onto the mainland, they would always scramble to kill monsters and level up as fast as possible. However, he possessed the ultimate advantage of his knowledge from his previous life. Naturally, Cheng was confident. He would be able to claim the greatest hidden mission on this entire map, the one with the absolute highest cost-to-reward ratio. The scene then shifts to a desolate and long-abandoned village. Cheng entered a crumbling house and immediately discovered the hidden quest. As Cheng read the ancient paper, the system congratulated him. He had successfully acquired the legendary hidden mission, Disappearing Dark Shadow. The mission's difficulty level was 3.5, and the reward was mysteriously undecided. Cheng smiled and remarked that due to its incredibly obscure location, no one else in the entire world besides him should be able to find it. Not only did this legendary mission offer a massive amount of experience, but it also came with a phenomenal additional reward, gaining an unbelievably useful starting weapon. The scene then shifts to the blood-soaked sands of Disastrous Beach, where squads of players were battling against hordes of monsters. Suddenly, they found themselves under attack by other, more powerful players. A player named Raka shouted at a man named Ding Hong, accusing him of flagrantly breaking the school's sacred rules. He pointed out that not only was Ding Hong stealing their monster kills, but he was also intentionally harming other players, openly spitting on the established rules. Ding Hong just sneered and replied that all he was doing was simply attacking the monsters. He mocked that it wasn't like his magic. Attacks had eyes to distinguish between his foes. He also arrogantly roared that all the monsters on this entire stretch of beach belonged to them now, and if Raka and his pathetic group knew what was good for them, they would scram immediately. Raka shot back that this was a public area, not the private, personal property of their Molan college. In a flash, Ding Hong appeared directly behind Raka and asked, "And what exactly do you want to see? What will happen if you refuse to back down?"
Ding Hong confidently garantied
that Raka's group wouldn't be able to kill a single monster. Raka's friends then urged him to retreat, stating that with their current level of strength, they wouldn't be able to claim a single monster kill and would just be wasting their precious time. Others also began to pull Raka back, begging him to leave. They explained that Ding Hong and his teammates were all from the prestigious top 10 rank Molan College, and they were not people their humble squad could ever afford to offend. After everyone else had fled the battle zone, Zhao Yarn informed Ding Hong that there was still a lone vagrant killing monsters. Ding Hong glanced over and saw that it was Cheng, the special talent vagrant, dismissing him as nothing more than absolute garbage.
Ding Hong furiously shouted,
ordering his group to go and teach Cheng a harsh lesson. He then unleashed his taunting chains to attack, telling Cheng not to even dream of killing a single monster. Ding Hong instructed his teammates to execute their usual battle plan, saying that he would draw the monster's aggro, while the two mages would use Snowstorm to steal every single kill, without leaving a single scrap for Cheng to claim. The mages responded with a confident, "Okay." Seeing this unfold, Cheng wondered if Ding Hong truly planned to use the mage's wide-area attack power to steal the kill rights for all these monsters. Cheng knew that within the world of Apocalypse, there still existed a sacred rule of ownership rights. The very first person to reduce a monster's health by a set percentage would be the one to claim the absolute ownership rights to it. Cheng explained that under these sacred ownership rights, other players who killed the monster would not receive any rewards whatsoever. Most ordinary people would have no way to counter this brutal issue. But it was a stroke of terrible luck for Ding Hong, as the person he met today was Cheng. Cheng then activated his basic movement skill, Flash Step, and thought to himself, that as long as he could deal triple their combined damage output, the ownership rights would be forcibly transferred to him. Cheng then thought that he also needed to ensure to lower their health while making sure the aggro target remained unchanged in order to successfully steal the monsters. He knew that if the aggro target ever shifted, he would be instantly swarmed and targeted. As a close-quarters combat class, Cheng knew he had absolutely no way to kite these enemies, so he would need to rely on their own mages' control skills to help him perfectly execute his grand plan. Raka tells his teammates to look over there. That lone vagrant has foolishly rushed into the horde of monsters. They even wondered what on earth Cheng was planning to accomplish. Is that madman planning to steal monsters from two powerful mages? Ding Hong sneered and said that Cheng was just putting on a show. But does Cheng truly believe that a worthless vagrant like him can possibly deal enough damage to reclaim the ownership rights? As it just so happens, they can use their mage's wide area attack to obliterate him. Directly, in fact. The snowstorm attack also possesses a freezing effect, which drastically slows down the movement speed of all affected monsters. At that moment, a system warning appeared on the screen, stating that if a player perishes in the world of Apocalypse, their level will be decreased as a harsh punishment. Moreover, if their death count reaches a certain limit, revival will no longer even be possible. Ding Hong laughed cruelly at Cheng, saying it was Cheng himself who was asking for death, so he couldn't possibly blame them. Wei Jun also asked if Cheng really planned to steal their monster kills. Ding Hong then said this was the grim fate of anyone who dared to stand against their mighty Molan College. Seeing this, Raka's teammates remarked that it was no surprise, since the vagrant's damage output couldn't possibly match the mages at all. Not only had Cheng failed to steal the monsters, but he had also foolishly thrown himself into the fire. Suddenly, everyone began to hear the deafening sound of gunfire. Ding Hong asks in a state of confusion, "What's happening? How could the snowstorm not have killed Cheng?" Everyone else was also completely bewildered as to how Cheng survived, since the combined casting of snowstorm by two mages of this level is enough to instantly annihilate any class of the same level. Ding Hong, now frustrated, tells Xiao and Wei Jin to cast another snowstorm immediately. He insisted that they needed to hurry and kill the monsters first. In actuality, the moment the snowstorm began to be cast, Cheng realized he had used his lightning-fast attacks to trigger his passive skill, Ripple Slash, and managed to avoid the snowstorm's devastating damage. By using the snowstorm's own slowing effect to his advantage, Cheng could remain in one spot and begin firing with his Gatling gun, with the Gatling gun's 25% activation chance for its passive ability. Every single bullet he fired had a chance to trigger the devastating effect. Cheng began to unleash a storm of bullets with the Gatling gun, mowing down the monsters. Everyone was utterly shocked that Cheng had actually stolen all the monsters. They even wondered, confused, how the damage output of the Gatling gun could possibly be so high. All three of the students from Molan College were absolutely dumbfounded, realizing that the ownership rights had been snatched away by the vagrant. Cheng himself was also surprised by the sheer damage of the Gatling gun. Within just a few seconds, he had acquired 32 mutant sea turtle tails. Cheng then thanked Ding Hong and the others for all their generous help. Ding Hong, now completely enraged, vowed to make Cheng pay dearly for this humiliation. Seeing the entire spectacle unfold, the other players laughed at Ding Hong and his team, calling them absolute idiots. They hadn't even managed to steal the monsters, but ended up helping someone else steal every last one of them. It was a truly satisfying sight. Hearing the taunts and comments from the other college students, Ding Hong became furious and was about to lash out, but Zhao Yarn stopped him. He advised Ding Hong not to act rashly, pointing out that Cheng's damage output was even higher than all of theirs combined. He warned that they should proceed with caution. Ding Hong was left utterly speechless this time, so he began to retreat with his humiliated team. As he walked away, he told Cheng that he would remember his name, and he was certain they would meet again one day. Hearing this, Cheng ferociously asked if he had given them permission to leave. Ding Hong, now tense, told Cheng that they had stolen all the monsters from them, and were now conceding the entire area to him. He asked, "What more could you possibly want?" Cheng responded that his demand was simple. He would grant them 1 minute to hand over every single item they had farmed in this area just now. Otherwise, they would have to start leveling up from scratch all over again. Hearing this, Wei Jun screamed that Chung was going too far. He said, "So what if your damage output is ridiculously high? Even if it means a battle where both sides are annihilated, we will not let you take a single thing from us." Wei Jun began to conjure a massive fireball. Seeing this, Raka tensely asked, "Is that a fireball?" No wonder Wei Jun is a part of a top 10 school. Another onlooker commented that, while Cheng's skills weren't bad a moment ago, at the end of the day he was still just a lone vagrant. There was no way he could possibly handle such a powerful attack. To everyone's bewilderment, Cheng didn't move an inch from his spot, even as Wei Jun was conjuring the massive fireball. It seemed as if Cheng was patiently waiting for Wei Jun to fully cast the spell, as if he intended to deal with it once it was at its full power. Wei Jun, seeing Cheng remain motionless, laughed and asked if Cheng was paralyzed with fear, pointing out that he hadn't moved a single muscle. He added that he had initially thought Cheng was powerful, but it turned out he was just a good-for-nothing pretender, with absolutely no real combat experience. As Wei Jun launched the fireball, Cheng instantly switched to boxing gloves and dove to evade the attack. Then, with a move as fast as lightning, he landed an explosive punch on Wei Jun. In an instant, Cheng appeared behind Wei Jun and delivered a devastating flying kick, sending him soaring a considerable distance away. Wei Jun, now completely furious, asked Cheng if he actually dared to humiliate him like that. He insisted that he was not yet finished with Cheng. But before Wei Jun could do anything else foolish,
Dis non Roard.
And asked if Wei Jun still didn't think he had embarrassed himself. Enough. Ding Hong then snatched the collected items from Wei Jun and walked meekly towards Cheng. Ding Hong told Cheng that they had been far too impulsive earlier and hoped Cheng would kindly accept their surrendered items. Cheng accepted the loot, but deep down, he was pleased to have acquired 120 monster tails, all thanks to these idiots who had saved him so much time. Cheng then told Ding Hong and his humiliated teammates that they could now leave.
Raka, surprised,
Asked if his eyes were deceiving him, and if Cheng was truly a vagrant, considering he had just single-handedly defeated a group of elite students from Moulin University. All the other students there began to ask Cheng about forming a team with them, even offering him the coveted role of leader. A girl then shouted, asking what kind of team they were even talking about, as they could clearly see that God Cheng was collecting mission items. She urged everyone to hurry up and make way for the great god. They all agreed in unison and were ready to depart. Seeing this, Cheng felt a sense of satisfaction, thinking that it was exactly the same as it was in his previous world. On the mainland of the apocalypse, it was only one's absolute strength that decided who would reign supreme. For the time being, however, Cheng was relieved that no one would dare get in his way, as he continued to gather the items needed to complete his legendary mission. In fact, to complete the Dark Shadow mission, Cheng required 400 flatback sea turtle tails. Realizing that he still needed to gather 239 more, Cheng figured he'd be grinding through the entire night to collect them all. The scene then fades to the next day, where Cheng had finally finished collecting all 400 required tails. He was utterly exhausted and muttered, "No wonder this grueling, energy-consuming mission is a hidden one." But at the very least, he had managed to level up in the process. Cheng then checked his status board and realized that, after allocating his 6 unassigned stat points into agility, his agility had finally surpassed the legendary 100-point mark. With a combat power of over 10,000, Cheng realized that this was an achievement that many new first-year students would never be able to reach. Now that everything was finally prepared, it was time for Cheng to complete the mission and obtain his legendary novice weapon. The scene then shifts to the Grand Moulin University. Ding Hong and his mages were in the middle of a heated discussion. Zhao asked Ding Hong if it was truly necessary to make such a big fuss, just to deal with a single, lone vagrant. Ding Hong asked what Zhao could possibly know, explaining that even though Cheng was a student just like them, his movement skills were incredibly bizarre and unusual. Therefore, to completely and utterly eliminate Cheng, they could not afford to be the least bit careless. Ding Hong then asked Zhao how the task he had previously assigned to her was progressing. Zhao responded that she had already arranged for someone to keep a close watch on Cheng, so there was absolutely no way he would be able to escape their grasp. Wei Jun shared that he had also contacted the top 31st year students, and out of sheer respect for Ding Hong, they had all agreed to lend their aid. Ding Hong praised them for their excellent work and said that now they were only missing one final key person. Zhao tensely asked if Ding Hong was referring to the provincial top scorer, the legendary Gui Yunfei. Ding Hong responded with a firm yes, explaining that it was said Yunfei not only possessed an S-rank talent, but also an ocean of abundant magic power. In just a single year, Yunfei had skyrocketed to level 21 in one go, becoming the undisputed, strongest new student. Wei Jun interrupted, mentioning that there were many rumors floating about that Yunfei was incredibly arrogant and conceited and wouldn't lift a finger as a favor for anyone. He then asked Ding Hong if he could actually recruit such a person. Ding Hong responded by scoffing, asking if there was anyone in the world who would refuse money. He added that if Yunfei claimed he had no interest in their money, it simply meant they would have to offer him even more. The scene then shifts to a short time later, where Yunfei was in the middle of practicing. Seeing this, Ding Hong remarked, "No wonder Yunfei is Moulin University's #1. Heaven's pride. To be able to utilize the exploding fireball skill to such a masterful extent." Yunfei displayed his absolute mastery. He then spotted Ding Hong and remarked that this area had been completely deserted for several months. Normally, no one ever came to visit this place. Yunfei also said that he wondered what the purpose was behind the young master of the wealthiest family in all of Jinhai, the great Ding family, coming to see him. Ding Hong replied that since classmate Yunfei already knew of him, he would be completely direct and straightforward. He then shared that he had a new combat plan, and he wanted to invite Yunfei to take part in it. But before Ding Hong could even finish, Yunfei directly responded that he was not interested. In response, Ding Hong shouted that he hadn't finished speaking, and that he hadn't come with the intention of letting Yunfei help him for free. Ding Hong then asked if Yunfei hadn't undergone his second-class change promotion yet. He then offered to provide Yunfei with all of the resources he would ever need to complete it. However, Yunfei still responded with a cold and firm no. As Yunfei began to walk away, Ding Hong tensely asked him to please wait. He then confessed that, to tell the honest truth, he had planned to ask for help this time, in order to teach a certain student a harsh lesson. He added that he would agree to any conditions Yunfei demanded. Ding Hong also shared that they had been mercilessly bullied by this Chang the previous day, and that Chang was only a lowly level 14 student. Ding Hong added that Chang's power was simply unfathomable, to the point where even the combined strength of the three of them wasn't enough to beat Cheng's opponent. Still, Yunfei emotionlessly asked Ding Hong to step aside. At that moment, Ding Hong desperately shouted, telling Yunfei that not only was Cheng a vagrant, but he had also defeated all three of them single-handedly, despite being at such an incredibly low level. Hearing this, Yunfei stopped and asked, "What, a vagrant?" A smirk crossed his face. He said, "How interesting." He had always believed that all the students in the entire province of the same grade as him were nothing but trash. But this time, he had finally stumbled upon an opponent who had piqued his interest. The scene shifts back to Cheng, who has just entered a local fishing gear store. After stepping inside, he told the shopkeeper, Jue, that he would like to inspect the shop's finest fishing rods and baits. Deep down, Cheng was thinking that collecting all those tails was only the very first step of his grand hidden mission. Now, he needed to acquire an excellent set of fishing gear and move on to the next stage. Luckily, Chang had around 100 gold coins, courtesy of those three idiots, which saved him the trouble of having to exchange the blue star currency that he had earned as his grand reward from the school. Jue told Chang that all the items in his store were clearly listed on the price list. Once Chang figured out what he wanted, he could simply let him know, and he would grab it for him. At that moment, Jue thought to himself that Chang seemed like just another naive, rich layman with far too much money. He figured Chang probably didn't know that the most vital part of any fishing gear set was how well the bait synergized with the fishing rod. He thought to himself that only a complete amateur would come in and ask for the most expensive products. After glancing at the price list, Cheng told Jue that the quality of his fishing bait was not particularly high, so it seemed that he would just have to make do with what was available. Chang then asked Jue to let him get an exquisite black bamboo fishing rod, along with 10 high-grade bloodworms as bait. Hearing Cheng's specific request, Jue was completely stunned. He began to wonder how it was possible that, in less than a single minute, Chang had picked out the single best matching equipment in his entire store. In addition, listening to Cheng's confident tone. It almost seemed as if he had possessed deep experience with fishing gear before. Jue wondered if Cheng might actually be a legendary fishing expert. But even if Cheng had started fishing from inside the womb, Jue thought it still shouldn't be possible for him to have such vast and extensive fishing knowledge. Jue then formally introduced himself and said, "Seeing that you have such a unique way of doing things, I wondered if you could be from a prominent fishing family here in the apocalypse." Cheng responded with a simple no, saying that fishing was barely even a hobby for him. Deep down, he thought the shopkeeper was misunderstanding, as in his previous world, this exact pairing of gear was the most optimal novice equipment that nearly everyone used. Jue then told Cheng that he could see he had a great eye for quality equipment, so he offered to give Cheng a generous discount on everything he wanted, only asking for a mere 10 gold coins in total. Deep inside, Jue thought that even if Cheng wasn't from some well-known fishing family, he surely was not just some ordinary person. Since Jue now had the chance to befriend Cheng, there was absolutely no harm in doing so. Jue shook hands warmly with Cheng and said that if Cheng caught anything valuable in the future, he could bring it to his shop to sell, and Jue would personally ensure he wouldn't face any unfair losses. The scene then shifts to a later time back at the disastrous beach. Everyone is still fighting the monsters and gathering their tails. Meanwhile, Cheng stands alone by the turbulent seaside, thinking that now he has the sea turtle tails and the proper fishing gear. But he is still missing one final, crucial component. Cheng shares that he remembers from his past life, on that small, forgotten island across the sea, a new, rare boss would spawn once every 72 hours. Even though it's not too far from the novice village, most novices could not possibly handle that boss, so very few people would ever dare to go there. Cheng then thinks that what he needs is a special drop from that rare boss, an item that allows him to breathe underwater indefinitely. To ensure the success of the mission, disappearing dark shadow, this legendary item is absolutely essential. The onlookers were stunned to see someone leap into the treacherous sea. Cheng narrates that everyone should know the maximum time anyone can stay underwater on the apocalypse mainland is a mere 2 minutes. If that time limit is ever exceeded, the person will take damage equal to 10% of their maximum health. Every single second, no matter how much health they have, they can only last for 10 seconds before drowning. Moreover, being in the water attracts countless dangerous monsters, adding to the harsh death penalty of the apocalypse mainland. Under any normal circumstances, no one would ever dare to enter the water recklessly. On the shore, people were murmuring about Cheng, saying he was truly incredible. The situation beneath the sea was far more dangerous than on dry land, and they had never witnessed a novice brave enough to enter the sea alone. They wondered if Cheng wasn't afraid of encountering unknown, terrifying monsters. Meanwhile, two shadowy brothers, Mike and Tyson, were secretly keeping a close watch on Cheng. Mike asks Tyson if, since everyone is talking about how dangerous entering the sea is, should they still go in and pursue their target, Cheng? Tyson coldly responds that wealth and honor are only ever gained in perilous situations, and the remaining amount Zhao Yarn agreed to pay upon mission completion is enough for them to live in luxury for many years to come. Tyson also mentions that he heard there aren't many truly dangerous monsters in this particular area of the sea, so he suggests they find a secluded spot and enter the water immediately. Mike responds with a firm yes. The scene shifts to a small island deep within the Shadow Archipelago. Cheng is now heading purposefully somewhere on the island. Tyson tells Mike that they should just follow Cheng from a distance for now, as the island is so small that even if they ran completely around it, it wouldn't take them more than 10 short minutes. Tyson adds that if they get any closer to him, they risk being exposed. Since Xiao Yan is paying them so much money, Cheng's true strength should not be underestimated. Tyson warns Mike to avoid any and all face-to-face conflict with Cheng. Mike responds that he understands completely. There is no way Cheng could possibly escape their watchful eyes, the very moment he attempts to make his return. In another place, Cheng had finally arrived at the Forgotten Summoning Altar and initiated the dark mechanism to call forth the demonic beast. At that instant, Cheng was rewarded with a novice staff, and the summoned creature manifested, its name echoing in the void, sticky radioactive dust, a terrifying level 18 elite magic elemental monstrosity. Cheng charges the monster, a familiar smirk on his face, saying, "It has been a very long time, my old friend." In furious response, the sticky radioactive dust monster roared and lunged directly at Chung, unleashing its first devastating attack. Chung recognized its attack as corrosive mud and was surprised the sticky radioactive dust monster would deploy such a formidable move from the very beginning of their battle. In that instant, Chung thought to himself that if his memory served him correctly, being struck by the corrosive mud will inflict a 30% reduction in his speed, in addition to a 50-point penalty to his damage. Creates a devastating double debuff that can stack repeatedly. With blinding speed, Chung began to move, knowing that if he were to be struck even once, his current damage output would plummet by more than half, making it an attack he could not afford to be hit by. Chung switched his weapon to a deadly longsword and assaulted the sticky radioactive dust monster with a devastating Ripple Slash. He had already shifted Ripple Slash to a passive ability, and continued his relentless, unending assault. The sticky radioactive dust monster howled in agony and spewed a cloud of toxic smoke. Seeing this, Chung immediately recognized it as a radioactive cloud and warned that once a person is poisoned by it, they will begin to lose a continuous stream of health every second. Chung instantly switched his weapon to a Gatling gun and began to open fire. He knew that this particular monster boss specialized in using various AoE skills, making it incredibly challenging to land any close-range attacks. But to compensate for that, the monster has incredibly slow movement speed, which is its one and only fatal weakness. With the Gatling gun's passive ability activated, Chung started unleashing a storm of bullets at the monster boss. Finally, with a massive explosion, Chung obliterated the boss monster. After the battle, he was rewarded with a legendary water vine staff. Chung acquired the item and smiled, saying that its powerful effect was identical to the one in his past world. Chung then thought that now all his preparation work was finally complete, and it was time to fish for the legendary disappearing dark shadow. What was about to unfold would be an arduous and ferocious battle. After all, it was the novice village's most powerful hidden boss. All the preparations Chung had made beforehand were simply to increase his odds of conquering this impossible mission. On his journey back, Chung spotted the two shadowy brothers once again. He wondered to himself how, ever since the day before, Chung mused that since these guys were so incredibly patient, why not make them wait for him just a little bit longer? He dove into the water and activated the water vine staff's hidden effect, granting him the ability to breathe underwater indefinitely. The scene fades to a few hours later. We see Mike and Tyson miserably emerging from the water. Mike cried that he couldn't take it any longer, as it had already been 4 long hours and his skin had started to prune. Mike asked if it was possible that Chung could have escaped already. Tyson replied that it was completely impossible. There's nothing but the vast, endless sea on the other side of this tiny island. If Chung desires to return to the mainland, he can only pass through their single exit point. Mike then asked Tyson why they don't ascend and take a look. Could it be possible that there are monsters up there that have already taken care of Chung for them? Tyson replied that, if that were the case, they could simply take all the credit for the contribution. After searching the island for some time, they are still unable to locate Chung and wonder where he could have gone. They had already scoured the entire island, but Chung was absolutely nowhere to be found. They were utterly and completely bewildered, wondering how on earth Chung managed to escape. So they frantically called Xiao Yan and told him that the situation was not good. Chung had somehow managed to slip away right under their very noses. They were trembling with fear at that moment. Mike tensely asked what kind of godlike entity they had provoked, and declared that the deal was completely off. There was no way he was continuing with this suicide mission. The scene then shifts to some time later, at the Shattered Archipelago's legendary fishing spots. Chung had finally arrived at his destination. Chung thought that now all of his strenuous preparations were complete, and for the next phase he would need to fish, in order to activate the latter part of the mission. From what Chung could recall, the disappearing dark shadow fishing spot should be at the exact location where he was standing. To Cheng's complete astonishment, he saw an old man already fishing and occupying the sacred spot. Chung attempted to read the mysterious character's information, but he was completely unable to. This made him tense, as he wondered how that was even possible. In truth, on the Apocalypse mainland, if there is a massive level discrepancy between players, lower-level players are forbidden from checking the stats of higher-level players. Suddenly, the old man, Akash, asked if Chung had also come to fish, and if so, to come and sit beside him. Chung was taken aback by the unexpected invitation. Akash said that as a young man, it is wise to be cautious. But as Chung already knew, he could easily strike Chung down with his current level of power. So, if Chung truly wished to fish, he was more than welcome to join him. Chung agreed and began to fish, thinking that he would simply fish until Akash finally departed. Then he could finally complete his legendary mission. Observing Chung, Akash was surprised and wondered how Chung was neither arrogant nor subservient, not making a fool of himself in the presence of a great power like Akash. It showed that Chung was quite audacious. In just 2 minutes, Chung had already caught an 8-pound grass carp. Chung smirked, saying that he must be quite lucky to have landed an 8-pound fish on his very first attempt. Deep down, his fishing prowess was consistently regarded as some of the best in the world. Akash also commented that it seemed Cheng's luck was indeed quite good. Just 1 minute later, Chung caught yet another fish, and then another one in the following 2 minutes. Witnessing this, Akash was utterly astounded and shouted, asking how Chung was catching so many fish. He declared he had been fishing there for half a day, and still had not managed to catch a single thing, wondering how on earth Chung was accomplishing this feat. This incredible streak continued as Chung caught even more fish, one after another without pause. Seeing this, Akash shared that he never would have imagined that, even in all his years of dominating the fishing world, he would actually encounter a monstrous genius like Chung. Akash pleaded that if Chung could teach him some of his magic, he would be eternally grateful. Hearing this, Chung thought to himself that with skills even worse than an amateur, this Akash still dared to claim he had dominated the fishing world for many years. Chung wondered if this was what they meant by a passionate newbie. Chung boldly offered a few powerful suggestions on the art of fishing. As he shared his profound knowledge, some minutes passed. After hearing everything, Akash erupted in laughter and praised Chung, saying that he was truly something else. At such a tender young age, Chung actually possessed so much wisdom in the field of fishing, which was truly something to be admired. Suddenly, Akash's entire expression changed. He told Chung that based on his keen observations, it wasn't just Cheng's fishing skills that were remarkable, but his individual combat abilities seemed even greater. Akash decided it was time to test this young genius, so he shifted into a combat stance and asked why Chung had chosen the forsaken path of the vagrant. Chung instantly drew his deadly Gatling gun, in mere seconds, fully prepared to do battle. Chung smirked and asked, "And why shouldn't I walk the path of the vagrant?" Hearing this, Akash replied that he understood. With such unparalleled talent, even if Chung were to walk the path of the vagrant, he was destined to ascend to heights that few could ever dream of. Akash then asked if Chung would be willing to accept him as his master. Chung replied, thanking Akash for his kind intentions, but stated he preferred to walk his solitary path alone. Akash respected Cheng's powerful decision, and told him that, if there ever came a day when Chung changed his mind, his door would always remain open to him. Akash then bestowed a mysterious ring upon Chung, telling him that if he ever found himself in grave danger, he could feel free to contact him at the Management Association whenever he was in need. Seeing the ring, Chung became tense and asked what ancient era they were living in, to still be using ancient rings to send messages. In the next scene, we see a group chat. Mike and Tyson are sharing that they have received intel regarding Cheng's current whereabouts. Javier orders everyone to assemble at Tanhai City's Management Association. The scene then shifts to the Grand Management Association, where everyone is shocked to see Ding Hong and other high-ranking, powerful individuals all present. Everyone in the hall is tense, wondering why a group of outstanding Moulin University students has come to Tanhai City's Management Association. They all begin to gossip about Ding Hong and the legendary Yunfei. Before entering the Apocalypse mainland, Ding Hong thinks that this time, Chung will most certainly die. He then tells Yunfei that in a few minutes, everything will be up to him. At that moment, Yunfei coolly thought he would let this group of foolish bums go ahead and test the waters for him first. If Chung was truly as powerful as Ding Hong had claimed, then he would have an exhilarating battle with Chung. As they were all entering the world of Apocalypse, an employee from the Management Association named Shou Zhang frantically called Wu Zhongli and informed him that Ding Hong had brought 20 people with him and entered the Apocalypse mainland. Shao asked again if something huge was about to go down. Hearing this, Zhongli became extremely tense and ordered Shao to follow them and report back to him immediately if anything of significance were to happen. After hanging up the communicator, Zhongli anxiously wondered, why all the children from the great Ding family only seemed to stir up trouble. He thought they could not allow Ding Hong to cause another massive incident. The scene shifts back to Chung, who still had 39 tails remaining to catch the dark shadow while fishing. Chung thought to himself that this should not be possible. After all, he had used 400 tails to fish out the great dark shadow, the largest amount he had ever once used in his entire previous world. Chung then thought, furthermore, someone like me, who was once a great emperor, couldn't have just become a mere tribal chief, right? Suddenly, Ding Hong appeared and greeted Chung, saying, "It seems like you won't be able to continue fishing much longer." Seeing Ding Hong, Chung smiled and casually asked, "Weren't you one of those 3 pathetic losers?" Chung then asked again, "Did you really need to bring backup because you couldn't handle me alone, right?" Chung remarked that he never imagined the esteemed Moulin University would possess such a unique and pathetic tradition. Seeing Chung, Yunfei was thoroughly amazed, thinking that the battle to come would be truly fascinating.
Ding Hong shouted fiercely.
"Since you have offended the great Moulin University, do you truly think you will be able to escape?" Ding Hong declared that from this day forward, they would continuously kill Chung until he was reduced back to level 1. However, to everyone's absolute astonishment, Chung managed to successfully catch the dark shadowfish, the legendary monster from the hidden mission. When Chung pulled it out of the water, everyone was shocked and wondered what kind of monster it was. They asked, "Is this the legendary hidden monster? Did Chung really just manage to fish it up?" The dark shadowfish was, in fact, a monster named Prince Nazak, a terrifying level 22 elite chieftain. Seeing this, Yunfei thought with tension, a level 22 elite chieftain. Even for me, it would be difficult to kill it by myself. He also wondered if Prince Nazak's appearance had something to do with Chung. Wei Jun grew excited and told Ding Hong, "This is an incredibly rare boss. Moreover, since we brought so many people, once we kill this boss monster, it is certain to drop some amazing legendary items." Hearing this, Chung smiled and shouted, "Wei Jun isn't wrong about the amazing items, but to collect them, you will first have to stay alive." With that, he hurled the fishtails directly at them. As the tails flew, Prince Nazak leaped towards them to attack. Everyone tensed up with fear, but Yunfei quickly used his ice seal technique to capture and hold Prince Nazak firmly in place. Yunfei shouted. While attacking, Ding Hong praised Yunfei, saying, "It is only Yunfei, with his amazing skills, who can stall Prince Nazak." Ding Hong then shouted in a fit of rage, saying, "Damn it, Chung dared to plot against all of us. You, bring some people to kill Chung first, then come back and help the rest of us." As some of the players moved to assault Chung, he quickly and calmly analyzed the situation. 3 magic swordsmen had come to restrict his movements, while 3 mages were in the back, preparing their devastating attacks. However, no matter what flashy or brilliant tactics Ding Hong employed, they were all utterly useless in front of Chung. He drew his weapon, the mighty lance, and unleashed the devastating skill Wide Sweep. After that, Chung switched his weapon to shurikens and hurled them to attack. Seeing the mages get struck down, Ding Hong became tense and wondered what was happening. Chung then switched to a one-handed sword and unleashed the full moon slash attack. Everyone was tense, watching Cheng's impossibly rapid weapon switching. Even though Chung possessed the Vagrant class, it still shouldn't have been possible to switch weapons so fluidly. They also noted that, in the past, whenever they faced a Vagrant, it would take twice as long for them to switch their weapons, compared to the speed of Chung. They could not comprehend how Chung was doing it so effortlessly. By then, Prince Nazak had become even more enraged. The boss's health had dropped far too low, causing its control to be forcibly shattered, and it had now entered its second, horrifying berserk phase. Prince Nazak angrily struck the very ground, breaking it apart and bellowing, "All of you, fall into my inescapable watery confines." Everyone was plunged into the dark water. At that moment, Chung felt a wave of relief. He was thrilled to see that Prince Nazak had finally entered its second phase, which took place in the water, an area where Chung held the ultimate advantage. The system screen flashed, displaying that Prince Nazak had entered the second phase, 30 seconds of immobile invincibility remaining. Seeing this information, Wei Jun asked Ding Hong tensely, "What should we possibly do now? This area is extremely disadvantageous for our mages, and there's no way for everyone to stay underwater for very long. Every 2 minutes, we will have to surface for air." Zhao Yan also suggested to Ding Hong, Why don't we just forget about killing Chung and make our escape? Either way, Prince Nazak will definitely finish Chung off for us. At that moment, Ding Hong thought to himself, this is such horrible luck. Even after going through all that trouble to bring everyone into the apocalypse, we had to encounter such a bizarre and powerful boss. Ding Hong wondered if even the heavens themselves were trying to help Chung. He thought that it just wasn't fair. Yunfei then told everyone, if you want, you can all leave first. But I am going to pay our friend Chung a personal visit. Hearing this, Ding Hong felt a surge of relief, thinking that as long as they had the mighty Yunfei, they still had a fighting chance. He then announced, even though we are feeling extremely uncomfortable right now, it must be the exact same for Chung. Ding Hong decided they would abandon killing Prince Nazak for now and focus all their efforts solely on killing Chung. He promised that as long as they could kill Chung, he would give every single one of them double the rewards. Hearing this, everyone became excited and rushed towards Chung to kill him. Cheng, however, smiled and thought, even in my own home turf, they are still foolishly trying to kill me. Excellent. Despite his confident thoughts, everyone kept attacking Chung relentlessly. At that moment, Chung realized the boss's 30-second invincibility countdown was almost over and he couldn't keep getting held up by them. Otherwise, even he would face great difficulties in the water. When Chung disappeared, Ding Hong wondered if Chung was trying to lead himself to his own watery grave. He thought that one can only hold their breath for a maximum of 2 minutes. But if Chung swims this deep into the abyss, will he even be able to surface later on? By then, Prince Nazak's phase of immobile invincibility had finally ended, and he let out a world-shaking, powerful roar. Hearing that terrifying roar, Ding Hong became tense, realizing that he had completely forgotten that within the water, the most terrifying existence was not Chung, but rather Prince Nazak. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Prince Nazak unleashed his deep-sea whirlpool attack. A massive watery tornado formed, and everyone began getting pulled into it, struggling desperately to stay above the water. The players tensely asked what exactly was this strange, otherworldly force making them lose control of their bodies. Ding Hong, growing more and more tense, realized that if they were to be swept into the deep sea, there was no way they would be able to make it out. Within 2 minutes, as everyone started to drown, alone Yunfei, on the other hand, used his fireball to attack Prince Nazak. However, the damage was pitifully low, barely having any noticeable effect on the powerful boss. Seeing the pathetic result, Yunfei was stunned and wondered how it was possible. Even after he, a powerful level 21, used his full power to cast the explosive fireball skill, the resulting damage output couldn't even reach half of what it normally would. Even Ding Hong grew incredibly tense, and everyone discussed how with their current skills, they would not be able to stand up against Prince Nazak. They realized that their only option for survival was to run away. Ding Hong told Yunfei that Chung would surely die within the deep sea, so they should make their retreat first. Yunfei agreed, saying he would challenge Chung another day, and suggested they fall back for the time being. As everyone began to ascend above the water, Prince Nazak roared, "Now that you have angered me, you still wish to run? There's no way." Prince Nazak unleashed his freezing current attack, freezing every single one of them in place. They grew tense as they found themselves completely unable to move. Slowly, they received a horrifying notification that their oxygen had been completely depleted and their remaining time until death was 10 seconds. Just before dying, Ding Hong screamed, "Chung, just wait until I respawn. I am not finished with you yet." Suddenly, he saw Chung and was utterly shocked, shouting, "How is it?" Before disappearing, Ding Hong screamed at Chung, "You will not die an easy death." Once everyone was gone, Chung turned to Prince Nazak and said, "Now it's just the two of us left." Seeing Chung, Prince Nazak was surprised and attacked with his freezing current. However, Chung quickly used his telekinetic shield to completely block the attack. After evading, Chung switched to his voyage boots to instantly close the distance. Chung then activated the haste effect of his legendary voyage boots to run even faster. As he moved, he thought to himself, even though I am only level 15, after equipping these powerful boots, the 10 points of attribute increase make my stats nearly equal to those of a level 17. Chung switched his weapon to a one-handed sword and said, adding the 1.5 attribute increase from being a spellbinder, it is more than enough for me to have stats comparable to a level 25. Since Prince Nazak was now completely suppressed, his attack power was increased even more. Chang took full advantage of the situation and plunged his sword deep into Prince Nazak, dealing an immense amount of damage. In response, Prince Nazak grew furious and shouted that he was going to kill Chang. Chang switched back to his Gatling gun and began his assault. After unloading all of the bullets, Prince Nazak's health was reduced to a mere 101 points. Seeing this, Chang felt a powerful surge of excitement, knowing that it was now time for him to end this battle. Prince Nazak shouted in a fit of fury,
Abominable humans.
"Don't even think about taking a single thing from me. I am taking you down with me." Chang laughed and said, "Let's see if you can even survive." Before getting close, suddenly, Chang hurled a single stone at Prince Nazak. Before Nazak could even react, he was killed, and the circling shuriken attack began. The system congratulated Chang for completing the hidden mission, Disappearing Dark Shadow, and he leveled up to level 17. As a reward, Chang received a magnificent treasure chest filled with valuable gift items. Chang then climbed out from the water, and upon opening the grand treasure chest, the system congratulated him for obtaining an epic-grade accessory, the title charm. A system screen displayed that the item's level was not the minimum required level to be able to equip it, but rather a value that corresponded to the item's overall raw power. The higher this value, the better the item's overall quality. For items without a set equipping level, there would be no restrictions whatsoever on using it. Chang wore a devilish smile on his face and said, "Now that I possess the title charm, I have yet another trump card." He explained that its soul shock skill works on all monsters and humans, ignoring all level differences and any other restrictions. Chang realized that with the legendary title charm, facing enemies of the same level would make him virtually invincible. He would even be able to go toe-to-toe against enemies 10 levels higher than him. The scene shifts to the Jiangqing City's Education Bureau. A person named Wan Tianfeng, a powerful Stage 3 expert, shouted that he did not agree with giving Chang from Jiangqing No. 1 High School a spot on this year's highly coveted recommendation quota. Li Tian, another level 3 expert, asked, "He shattered Jiangqing City's historical records and set the unprecedented achievement of reaching level 14. So if not him, then who else deserves it?" Tianfeng responded that he admitted Chang is an exceptional talent, but he has no viable class change. Chang chose the pathetic path of the vagrant. He shouted, "Every single year, Jiangqing City only receives 1 recommendation spot. So how can we possibly afford to give it to Chang, who has no future? That is why I am completely and utterly against it, and there is no way I will ever agree to it." Li Qian stood up and shouted, "Who in this bureau doesn't know about Tianfeng's personal grievance with Education Commissioner Yamen? So is there really a need for you, Tianfeng, to avenge your personal grudges under the guise of public interest?" Suddenly, a person named Vivek clapped to interrupt them and said, "The way to resolve this entire dispute is extremely simple. Originally, we three agreed to give the recommendation spot to Fenghua High School's Li Dao." Vivek continued, "It is because Li Dao not only reached level 12 during his examination, but he also awakened an S rank Berserk casting challenge and changed his class to the Mighty Warlock." Vivek added that with this powerful combination, Fenghua High School's prodigy can already be considered a peak stage 1 awakener. But it's only because Chang suddenly and unexpectedly emerged that everyone has now gathered once again to rediscover this matter. Vivek then asked, "Why don't we let Chang and Li Dao have a formal duel, and the winner will obtain the recommendation spot? How does that sound?" The scene then moved back to the fishing gear store, where Xiao He apologized to Chang for keeping him waiting. Xiao He mentioned that he had just weighed all the fish he had caught, and the total came to an impressive and astounding 734 pounds. He asks again if Chang is the reincarnation of the great fishing immortal. He then offers Chang a 30% raise in the total prize, and asks him to take and count the large sum of prize money. Seeing this, Chang thinks it's not bad, as he just sold it for 48 gold coins. The mainland of the apocalypse truly is a land full of endless treasures. At that moment, Chang heard a voice coming from the television. A reporter was sharing that they were currently at Jiangqing College, bringing the latest breaking news. Surprised, Chang asked what Jiangqing College was. He asks Chang if he knows about it, and mentions that it has been all over the news recently. He adds that Jinshin College and Manhwa College have set up a grand inter-school competition to fight for the legendary recommendation spot. Chung, confused, wonders what the recommendation spot even is and what this inter-school competition is all about. Chung checks his communicator's log, wondering why no one ever told him about something. When he opened his phone, he saw over 99 missed calls from Zhang Lei. Chung laughs at himself, realizing why he hadn't been notified. Due to the stellar results from his last exam, he kept receiving an endless stream of spam calls, so he decided to set his communicator to Do Not Disturb mode. Chung decided to first see what was currently happening. The reporter shared that the inter-school competition had two main parts: a team battle worth 10 points and consecutive duels worth 20 points. The school with the most points at the very end will win the recommendation spot. The team battle is a brutal 5v5 fight, with the outcome decided in a single winner-take-all match. The consecutive duels will require both schools to send 20 contestants, each one after the other, until one side has no remaining contestants left. In the battle arena, the anchor announces and asks everyone to give a huge round of applause to welcome the contestants of the team battle event to the grand stage. From Jiangshan College, there is a grappler, a mage, a priest, a berserker, and a gunner, while Fenghuang College has a swordsman, a knight, an assassin, a mixed martial artist, and a warlock. The audience begins to praise Jingjing, but they are tense because Fengluo College's star player, Lei Daoyao, is already at the mighty level 12. Still, some believe that Chang is even greater than Lei Daoyao. Still, they were confused because they had not seen Chang for so many days. At this time, Feng asked Yamen if Chang is too terrified to compete. Yamen reassures Tianfeng, saying not to worry, as he believes Chang will most definitely show up on the battleground. Lei Daoyao asks Jingjing, where is this supposedly amazing Chang? Or is it just all the trash from Jiangcheng College? Who wants to compete with me? Lei Daoyao continues, saying, it seems Yangshan College is nothing more than this. At that moment, Jingjing tensely wondered where exactly Chang had run off to. With a recommendation spot on the line, how could Chang just sit back and do absolutely nothing? Jingjing then shares the battle plan with her entire team, stating that their mage will be positioned at the back, and they must ensure their priest doesn't get attacked by the enemy's deadly assassin. Moreover, since Manhwa College didn't bring any healing classes, Jinshin College's primary target for their attacks should be their priest. In a bit, when she provides her cover fire, the grappler and the berserker need to work in perfect unison, and rush directly toward Lei Daoyao, making sure not to let him cast his powerful spells too easily. Lei Qian then announces the official start of the match. As soon as the match begins, Fengwu College starts assaulting Jiangshan College. The reporter begins sharing his analysis of the match, mentioning that it is senior sister Jingjing whom he knows, relying solely on her A-rank talent, firepower control, which increases her firearm skills firepower by a massive 25%. She has completely outmatched the enemies at the front lines now. The grappler can take advantage of this golden opportunity, and Li Daoyao will now face some serious difficulties. But as the grappler goes to attack Li Daoyao, the knight interrupts and uses his intercept skill to assault the grappler. After that, Fenghua's assassin uses his exclusive invisibility skill to sneak up behind Jingjing. Noticing the assassin has vanished, protect their lifeline, the priest. At that moment, the priest shrieks in terror, a desperate warning for Jingjing to look behind her. By the time Jingjing could even turn her head, the shadow strike had already found its mark. However, she miraculously endured the blow by unleashing a counterattack on the assassin. Afterward, Jingjing, completely bewildered, demanded to know why the true target was her and not their priest. Lai Doi sneered, revealing she had completely misunderstood his grand strategy. The true core of Jinshin's formation was not the healer, but the gunner. With a cruel smile, Lai Doi began to conjure a deadly lightning ball, and it was clear to everyone that it would only take 3 seconds to cast. The entire audience was stunned, wondering aloud. A devastating attack like the legendary lightning ball normally requires a full 5 seconds to cast. This is impossible. It makes no sense. With a magic user possessing such impossibly fast casting speed, how could anyone in the world possibly hope to compete? Tianfeng laughed and declared he would clarify everyone's confusion. Tianfeng explained that Li Dao you had awakened the legendary S-rank talent, berserk casting, which can directly shorten the casting time of all spells by 30%. As Li Doi launched his attack towards Jingjing, the priest desperately tried to aid her with a shield incantation. However, Li Doi laughed mockingly and told Jingjing not to bother running, as his devastating lightning ball spell had already locked onto its target. Finally, Jingjing was struck by the lightning ball and collapsed violently to the ground, grievously wounded. Seeing this, Sui Qin was stunned and rushed towards Jingjing to save her life, screaming that there was no need to continue this brutal battle. She mourned that if they didn't hurry up and heal Jingjing, she might truly perish, so they conceded the battle. Li Daoyu began to laugh maniacally, gloating that Jiangqing had already lost its star player, and that their hero, Cheng, was still too cowardly to show his face. He added that this meant Jiangqing College was destined to be crushed beneath Fengyue College's feet. The reporter announced that Jianqing ultimately lost the team battle due to Jingjing's devastating collapse and subsequent defeat. The scene shifts to some time later. The score of the duel matches is now a brutal 18-4. Fengluo College had won an overwhelming 18 rounds, while Jianqing had only managed to claim 4 meager rounds so far. Currently, Fenghua College's Wang Delay, a powerful level 10 berserker, and Jianqing College's Zhang Xiaoxi, a level 10 swordsman, are locked in combat. The Jiangqing audience was terrified and tense, thinking that all hope was lost. They had already been defeated in 18 rounds of the consecutive duels, and once they lost only 2 more, they would be utterly and completely annihilated. Meanwhile, Fengwu College still had 15 fresh contestants who hadn't even stepped on stage yet. It was all because Li Daoyao was simply too powerful, having claimed 8 victories in a row, shattering the old record before he finally stepped down. In this dire situation, even if Chang were to appear, the audience feared that the battle would still be completely unwinnable. Tianfeng tells Yamen that if he were to concede for the time being, he would still be able to preserve some of his precious reputation. Yamen coldly responds that the battle is not over yet. Tianfeng shares that he never would have imagined there would be a day when Yamen would be so deeply worried. Still, Tianfeng agrees, saying they should savor this precious moment and witness Fengwu College's brilliant and dazzling performance. On the other side, Zhang Lei was still frantically trying to call Cheng, feeling immense tension and wondering why Cheng wasn't answering his phone. Wang Delay taunts Xiaoxi, wondering how, even when her college is facing such a monumental crisis, their so-called hero Cheng is still unwilling to show his face. Saying this, Wang Delay unleashes an attack on Xiaoxi, telling her to get lost. She is struck by the bullet and plummets to the ground, but just before her body hits the cold floor, a figure appears in a flash of motion, catching her in his arms. Seeing this scene, everyone is shocked and wonders, is that Cheng Kaimo? Cheng tells Xiaoxi to leave the rest of the battle to him. Upon seeing their hero, Cheng, the students of Jiangqing are filled with a surge of raw excitement. They believe that Cheng can still claim vengeance for their college and win the entire battle, so they begin to chant, urging Cheng to unleash his vengeance. Wang Delay asks Cheng, "So you are the amazing vagrant from Jiangcheng College that everyone has been praising so highly?" But he adds that it's far too late, as Cheng is destined to be defeated by him. Saying this, Wang rushes directly towards Cheng, shouting and telling him to accept his death. But Cheng calmly brandishes his Gatling gun and attacks Wang, making him dizzy and ultimately ending the battle in an instant. After this, Cheng arrogantly asks, "Who is next to face me in battle?" The crowd begins to murmur, completely amazed by Cheng's move, as he just instantly defeated Wang Delay. They wondered how it was even possible, thinking that even though Cheng is 4 levels above Wang Delay, it shouldn't be possible to insta-kill him with a single move. At this point, a student urges everyone to hurry and look at Cheng's updated information. When they all saw the information panel, they were utterly stunned to see that Cheng is now a level 17 vagrant. They all asked in total disbelief, "It's only been 3 days since the examination in the secret realm. Does that mean Cheng has been leveling up every single day?" Seeing this, the students of Jiangqing believed they might actually have a chance to turn the entire tide and win the battle. Everyone begins to chant, "Senior Cheng Kaimo is incredible." Tianfeng is also shocked to see that Cheng is a level 17 vagrant. He asked in disbelief, "Cheng is merely a vagrant. How in the world did he level up so fast?" Tianfeng then asks Yamen if all of this was part of his grand plan. Yamen smiles and replies, "I didn't expect this, did you?" Deep down, Yamen thinks to himself that, in fact, he did receive Cheng's message, saying that Chang would be able to arrive on time. However, he never expected that Chang would have already reached level 17. Lydian comments that it seems Yaman is still the most patient one here. He asks, "It seems like you were holding a pair of jokers in your hand, while watching your opponent gloat over a simple straight. Was I right?" The scene shifts to the battlefield, where a new opponent named Jaluki, a level 10 assassin, steps forward and introduces himself. He then asks Chang to please give him a few pointers. Deep down, Loki wonders to himself that it's simply not fair. Even though it's the exact same competition, why did his teammates get to fight against those complete newbies and show off their strength on this grand and glorious stage, while he is now forced to face someone like Chang? But when it's his turn, Loki has to face the monster. Chang casually tells Loki to make it quick, as he is in a rush. Loki, thinking that he can only rely on his secret and deadly tactics, charges at Chang, hoping that they will somehow work. Loki uses his stealth technique to attack Chang, but Chang quickly counters by using the grappler skill Eagle Step to evade and strike back in just a single fluid move. Chang easily wins the duel against Loki. Seeing this, one of the boys in the audience comments, "So that's how it's done. It turns out you can draw out hidden opponents using an AoE attack." He then asks how come their own teachers never taught them about this kind of advanced fighting technique. The others agree and decide that they should talk to Chang, hoping he will impart some of his sacred teachings. Zhang Lei also realizes that this is precisely why the school so heavily supported Chang. By cultivating such an overwhelmingly powerful figure, it's the most optimal way to inspire the greatest fighting spirit within all the students. Not only does Chang's rise to prominence bring strength and glory to the school, but more importantly, it provides a massive morale boost to everyone. In just 10 minutes, the scoreboard now reads a stunning 19-all, with both schools having scored an even 19 points each. The scene shifts to the competitors' lounge, where Li Dao Yao is peacefully taking a nap. A student named Madel from Manhwa College rushes in, shouting that something terrible has happened. Li Dao Yao, still resting, asks with annoyance, "Can you not see that I was resting? What is so important that you need to make such a big fuss about it?" Adel urgently shares that Chang showed up at the very last second. Not only that, but in just 15 short minutes, Chang had already matched Li Dao Yao's legendary record of 8 consecutive wins. He adds that for the time being, all the students of Manhwa College have almost completely crumbled. Hearing this, Li Dao Yao was stunned and shockingly asks, "What? That couldn't possibly be true." The scene then shifts back to the auditorium, where the epic battle is still raging on. The audience is shouting in disbelief, unable to comprehend the miracle they are witnessing. They say it's simply unbelievable. They never thought they'd witness a 1 versus 15 miracle in their lifetime. Now the tables have completely turned, and the pressure is all on Manhwa. As long as Chang can finish off this final person, he will have accomplished the truly unimaginable, a comeback on the grand battleground. Li Jamu, a level 10 mixed martial artist, stands before Chang, trembling with absolute fear. He wonders why it had to be him, the final one. He knows that, in just a single moment, Chang will easily defeat him and ascend upon the throne as the victor. Why does it have to be him in this impossible situation? Suddenly, Li Dao Yao arrives and asks Chang, "What is the point of a level 17 like you bullying a level 10 student?" Li Dao Yao asks if Chang dares to fight him instead of Li Jamu. Zhang Lei interrupts, shouting that this is utter nonsense, since both parties had clearly agreed upon the rules beforehand. Since Li Dao Yao has already left the stage, he is no longer eligible to re-enter the battle. Li Dao Yao asks, "And since I am only level 12, what are you so afraid of, Chang?" He then asks again if Chang dares to face him in the final match. Chang thinks that a truly interesting person has finally arrived. He also has an uneasy feeling that something was not quite right when he was fighting the Fengwu student earlier. Luckily, he now has the perfect chance to confirm his dark suspicions. Chang then asks, "Since Li Dao Yao said this, why don't both Li Dao Yao and Li Jamu come at me together?" The audience at Jiangqing shouts, warning Chang to watch out, as Li Dao Yao's talent actually increases his casting speed by 30%. They mention that even their senior sister Jingjing fell victim to it. Li Tian tells Yaman that based on his understanding of him, he would definitely agree to this fight, Yaman shakes his head and says that he would allow it. Zhang Lei then announces that since both sides have agreed, the final, deciding match will be a fight between Li Jiamu and Li Daoyao's team against the lone Cheng Kaimo. Li Jiamu was smiling, while Li Daoyao leaped onto the battleground, telling Li Jiamu to focus solely on charging at Cheng, and to leave everything else to him. Zhang Lei then officially declares that the final match begins now. As soon as the battle begins, Li Jiamu rushes toward Cheng to attack with his skill, Fast Punch. However, Cheng easily and casually dodges. He switches to his boxing gloves and lands a devastating uppercut on Li Jiamu. Li Jiamu soars into the air from the sheer impact, and while he is airborne, Cheng attacks with a rising dragon fist. Li Jiamu is defeated in just a few brutal seconds. Everyone was absolutely thrilled and excited because Cheng truly lived up to his legendary reputation. With just a single punch, he was able to completely dismantle his opponent. Only Cheng can fully take advantage of the vagrant class and bring out its true godlike potential. Suddenly, a boy shouts, warning Cheng to watch out, as Li Daoyao's lightning ball is now ready. Cheng realizes something is terribly wrong with Lei Doyu's attack. Seeing Cheng's surprised expression, Lei Doyu smirks and asks if Cheng thinks it's a little too late for him to be so surprised now. Lei Doyu launches the lightning ball directly towards Cheng, shouting for him to die. In that critical moment, Cheng recalls that the lightning ball's cooldown time is 5 seconds. Taking Li Daoyu's talent into account, it should take at least 3.5 seconds to finish the casting. He activates his powerful telekinetic shield, thinking that it took him a full 3 seconds to deal with Li Jiamu just now. That means Li Daoyu was faster by a full 0.5 seconds. As both the lightning ball and the telekinetic shield collide, a massive blast occurs, creating a thick cloud of smoke everywhere. Slowly, as the dense smoke begins to dissipate, Cheng emerges from it. Cheng explains that although the talent Li Daoyu awakened was berserk casting, it is still fundamentally impossible for the cooldown of Li Daoyu's lightning ball to be reduced to a mere 3 seconds. Cheng also adds that even though Li Daoyu might have been able to deceive others, he would not be fooled. Since that is the case, Li Daoyu must have broken the sacred rules and received the second-tier blessing of the secret realm. Cheng asked again, "Am I right?" Li Dao was shocked that, even when faced with the full, raw force of his lightning ball, Cheng took the hit without so much as a scratch. Lei Daoyu tensely tells Cheng to stop with his nonsense, accusing him of making completely baseless accusations. In the audience, a student asks what Cheng just said, wondering what the secret realm's blessing is. Someone responds, asking how he could be so clueless, explaining that the so-called blessing is actually a special buff from the school's own secret realm. Their school's Crevice of Flames is split into 2 modes. Levels 1 to 10 are the easy difficulty, and once beaten, the person can receive a class change and awaken a talent. Levels 10 to 20 are the medium difficulty, and once beaten, the person receives the blessing from being baptized, which is essentially a powerful special buff. But based on Manhwa College's Li Daoyu's party's level, there is no way they could have feasibly completed the normal difficulty, so they must have gotten an expert to help them, which counts as cheating and is also forbidden by all the schools. Upon hearing this, everyone in the audience began to shout, demanding a strict and thorough investigation into Manhwa College, and calling for justice for Jinshin College. Likian asks Yaman if he could tell from the very beginning. Yaman tensely responds that, if it were not for Cheng's timely reminder, it would have indeed been very hard for him to notice. But as he thinks about it now, the casting speed is certainly extremely problematic. So, he suggests they go to the Management Association and check the data logs. Yaman also asks Tianfeng if he didn't agree with this course of action. Tianfeng stands up and begins to claim that now that Cheng cannot win, he wants to make these false and baseless accusations. Even though Cheng says there's a problem with Li Doi's casting speed, Tianfeng argues that it's something they did not even notice, so how could a mere student like Cheng have noticed it? The audience becomes confused and starts to agree, thinking that if those great big shots over there did not notice it, how could Cheng possibly have noticed it? After all, Cheng's perception is simply unbelievable, even for a third-year student. Suddenly, a student stands up and points out that, if they truly think about it, Cheng's strength far exceeds that of a normal third-year student by a very wide margin, which doesn't make any sense. Cheng realizes that Tianfeng is trying to avoid Li Doi's allegations by making these accusations against him first. Tianfeng smiles, thinking that for a third-year student to reach level 17 so quickly, there is no way Chung isn't hiding something himself. Chung simply responds that it is because he is extremely familiar with every single skill from every class. So with such a glaring problem being so obvious, he was able to notice it immediately. Tianfeng angrily shouts that it is all a bunch of utter nonsense, calling Chung a young brat who hasn't even finished his schooling, that he is making such boastful remarks about his capabilities. Tianfeng also shouts that Chung is overestimating his own abilities. Hearing this, the audience remarks that maybe Senior Chung is a bit too conceited, since even if Chung is a knowledge expert, he would, at most, know the details of a few popular classes, since there is a limit to what one person can do on their own, and with so many classes that exist, it is simply not possible for anyone to remember the details of every single skill. Tianfeng then says that since Chung is bragging so shamelessly, he will test Chung. He warns that if Chung gets even one single answer wrong, he shouldn't expect Tianfeng to let the matter slide. Tianfeng then asks Chung to explain the properties of the infighter's skill, Wall Driver. Hearing this question, the audience wonders if it's a little too obscure. The audience thinks it's all over, as that class is considered the absolute worst of the three well-known garbage-tier classes, with no one ever choosing to change their class to it. As a result, no schools specifically teach classes about it, so there's absolutely no way for Chung Kaimo to know anything about it. Tianfeng smiles widely, thinking to himself, let's see how you boast now. He reflects that, if it weren't for the time he met a very powerful infighter when he was much younger, he wouldn't even know anything about this particular aspect. Chung begins to explain that Wall Driver is one of the fundamental skills of the infighter class. By plunging the sword into the ground, an infighter can stun all enemies within a certain radius for about 0.8 seconds. In addition, it also increases movement speed by a full 20%, attack speed by 10%, and jump power by a massive 50%, all of which lasts for a total of 10 seconds. Hearing this, Tianfeng is stunned and wonders if he is hearing correctly. He can't believe Chung not only knows about the infighter class, but also its intricate details, a class he considers a garbage one. A boy in the audience asked if Chung had gotten it right, to which a girl responds that it is completely obvious. She points out that just by looking at Commissioner Tianfeng's expression, it's like he just ate a big pile of excrement, which is so incredibly satisfying to witness. The audience now thinks that Chung is on a completely different level, one that ordinary people like them could never even dream of reaching. However, some still say that even a blind cat can occasionally find a dead mouse, so Chung might have just gotten incredibly lucky. Li Daoyu speaks up, saying that since Chung claims to be so knowledgeable about his warlock class, he will ask a question. Li Daoyu then asks, can you tell us which hidden trait belongs only to the warlock class? Hearing this question, the audience gets angry at Li Daoyu. They feel that asking about the skill was already pushing the boundaries, but now Li Daoyu wants to ask about some obscure hidden trait, which they think is going way too far. They even mock Li Daoyu for being so utterly shameless. In response, Chung asks, isn't the hidden trait of the warlock class the ability to add a buff within the spell? Once people learn about incantations, he explains that incantations can be split into 5 core elements: metal, water, wood, fire, and earth, which correspond to the 5 fundamental natural properties. As a result, the different buff effects that these incantations can provide are varied. Chung also shares that the reason Li Daoyu's lightning ball was so incredibly powerful is because Li Daoyu imbued it with a metal attribute incantation. Chung adds that compared to Li Dao's ability to absorb the spirit of living beings, once he becomes a stage 2 spellcaster, his own knowledge is quite simple. Finally, Chung asks, what is so complicated about this minor detail? Li Daoyao is shocked and tensely asks how Chung knows all of this. He starts shivering, saying it couldn't possibly be true. Suddenly, Li Daoyao sits on the ground and bows before Chung. Tianfeng also says it's such a great pity, as with Li Daoyao's great talent, he had to fall down this dark and treacherous path. Tianfeng adds that this farce finally ends here, and thinks it's time to announce the final result. Li Shan asks Tianfeng what he thinks now. Tianfeng sadly responds that he admits his complete defeat, but only asks that they let Fenghua College off lightly, explaining that this entire situation was solely due to his own pettiness, and that he was completely blinded by his unending hatred. Li Shan then announces that As a representative of the Great Bureau of Education, Manhwa College has been officially disqualified and will be dealt with severely after a thorough investigation. He declares that the winner of this interschool competition is Jianxin College. Hearing this, the students begin to chant Cheng's name in pure happiness, celebrating him as their ultimate champion. Yamen approaches Chang and shares that Jianxin College can now officially declare that the sole recommendation spot to the top 10 universities in all of Jianxing City this year has been awarded to student Chang Qianma. Chang tells Yamen that he wants to know which secret realms each of the top 10 universities in the entire country possesses. The scene then shifts to some time later in the headmaster's office, where Chang is reading about the country's top universities. While reading, Chang tensely wonders why none of the top 10 universities have any of the first-class instance dungeons that he is currently searching for. Suddenly, his eyes focus on the name Shin Yu University. Chang asked why Shin Yu University, despite having quite a few legendary secret realms, is not a part of the top 10 universities. Li Tian responds that Shin Yu University certainly has a long and storied history, but it now lacks the resources and influence to compete with the top universities. Li Tian shares that 50 years ago, Shin Yu University possessed numerous powerful secret realms, and at the same time, its students were also incredibly strong. Back then, it was the undisputed #1 university. Sadly, with the slow passing of time, many new, powerful schools appeared, and the numerous secret realms. They had made everything much more difficult for Shin Yu University to maintain its dominant position. As a result, their students had to continuously receive blessings just to become stronger. However, for some unknown and mysterious reason, Shin Yu University's secret realms were always much more difficult than the average by a very wide margin, and their students, who wanted to clear instance dungeons of slightly higher difficulty, were faced with these immensely challenging dungeons. As time went on, more and more people gave up, and as a result, their strength began to sharply and drastically decline. At that time, Chang thinks that out of all the instance dungeons Shin Yu University possesses, there are many that he truly needs. Even though Shin Yu University is now in such dire straits, that is not very important to him. Chang smiles and tells them that he will return the recommendation spot back to the school, as he wants to participate in the university entrance examination and choose the school that he himself admires. Hearing this, Lydian was shocked and told Chang to think very carefully, as it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If Chang were to give it up, there would be no cure for his regret. Yamen placed a hand on Li Tian's shoulder and said there was no need to dwell on this matter. Yamen then added that since Chang had his own reasons, the school administration would respect his personal decision. However, they were not going to let Chang suffer any undue losses. So, if Chang had any requests, he could make them now. Chang quickly handed over a piece of paper, asking the school to provide him with those listed materials. Yamen smiled and took the paper, telling Chang to leave it all to him. But when Yamen read the list, he was utterly stunned and asked if Chang was planning to rob him blind. The scene shifted to Tianhai City's Management Association, where Xiao Zhang said they had finally found it. They had downloaded all the data from the nearby Novice Beach area, and it should contain all of Cheng's information. Xiao Zhang asked Zhongli to please take a look. As Zhongli reviewed the data, he began to wonder which university could have possibly produced such an astonishing genius. Zhongli was even more shocked to see that Chang was a third-year student at Jianxing College. He wondered how this was even possible. And to make matters even more surprising, Cheng's estimated combat power was over a staggering 12,000. Zhou Jiang also mentioned that it was no wonder that, as a level 15, Chang had killed a level 22 rare boss, and at the very same time, managed to retaliate against Ding Hong and the 21 others. Zhongli agreed, saying, there was no doubt Chang would eventually reach the very pinnacle of the world. Given the current state of Xia Nation, they were in desperate need of a top-notch genius. They absolutely could not let others destroy him. Suddenly, Xiao Zhuang tensely asked Zhongli to look at the monitor. When Zhongli saw it, he confusedly asked, how could there be someone whose estimated combat power is unknown? Zhongli wondered if this unknown person could be another peerless, hidden expert. Still, he was curious as to why this big shot was with Chang. At that moment, Xiao Zhang received new information that a representative from Moling University had paid them a visit. Zhang Li was surprised, but still went to the guest reception room to investigate. To his absolute shock, when he opened the grand gates, he saw many parents of different students from Moling University. Standing inside, the parents began to shout, saying their students were originally among the very best, but after this incident they had fallen 4 levels for no good reason. The losses they had suffered were simply too catastrophic. They even called Chung a vile scoundrel, saying he was such an evil person. Despite everyone being citizens of Xia Nation, Chung still dared to use such excessive and brutal force against them. They demanded Cheng's personal information, so they could go and find him and demand a full explanation. At that moment, Zhang Hongshan, a stage 3 red mage, and the executive vice principal of Moling University, arrived. Hongshan said that the demands of the people were perfectly clear and invited Zhongli to relay Cheng's information directly to them. Zhongli replied, telling Hongshan that he thought he should give this matter much more thought. Zhongli explained that as far as he was aware, Cheng was not at fault in this particular matter. The root of the incident ultimately stemmed from the arrogant provocation by Moling School students. Zhongli added that he couldn't just casually give out someone else's private information, as it would infringe upon Cheng's personal privacy. Suddenly, Hongshan emitted a strange and powerful aura and asked, "What if Moling University is insistent on investigating this matter?" At that moment, Zhongli thought to himself that Cheng had demonstrated an immense and tremendous potential. There was a good chance Cheng would be the great hope of Xia Nation, and there was no way he would let Moling University destroy Cheng's bright future. Zhongli also grew incredibly fierce, his own strained aura forming, and asked Hongshan, "What if I want to protect Cheng?" Seeing both of them like that, the parents of Moling School students grew absolutely terrified. Hongshan started to laugh and said that he already knew Zhang Li would be unwilling to budge, so he had planned for this eventuality beforehand. Hongshan shared that before Zhang Li had even arrived, he had already used the great name of Moling University to ask for assistance from the head office. They would likely be receiving the requested information in just a few moments. Hearing this, Zhongli grew frustrated, thinking of Hongshan as a true bastard. Hongshan had completely bypassed him and directly gone to ask for help from the highest office. Now it was all up to Cheng. At that moment, the system screen slowly began to appear, catching the undivided attention of everyone. The parents shouted, making sure that everyone noticed. They even mentioned that Hongshan's strength ranked in the top 5, so even the head office had to show him a certain level of respect. Since someone of his immense stature had made a move, everyone believed there was no way this would not succeed. But to everyone's absolute shock, the system displayed that Hongshan's request had been flatly rejected. Even Hongshan was shocked and wondered that, if even his personal request had been so easily rejected,